300 years in the past, the heavens' decree manifested upon the earth. Numerous hidden realms and dungeons materialized, bringing with them a multitude of formidable monsters, signaling humanity's impending doom. Yet following the initial chaos, the Awakened emerged. These Awakeners wielded formidable skills and ultimately triumphed over the monsters, rescuing the world from imminent destruction. To combat the ongoing threat of monsters, they delved deeper into secret realms to secure wealth and resources. Nations subsequently intensified efforts to nurture Awakeners, aiming for universal awakening by the age of 18. Wang Wei, 3rd year, Class 2, Awakening unsuccessful, no designation assigned. Li Wei, 3rd year, Class 2, Successful Awakening, designation Swordsman. Wang Hao, 3rd year, Class 2, Successful Awakening, designation Craftsman. Awakeners are typically classified into 3 categories based on their roles: combat, support, and creation. The combat category is regarded as the most pragmatic and sought-after profession, whereas the creation category, which lacks combat abilities, is generally deemed the weakest and least favored by many. Li Wei, having awakened as a magic swordsman, smiled proudly, raising his hands to signify his combat classification. On the other hand, Wang Hao realized with disappointment that he had awakened into a support role, prompting tears. Meanwhile, an unknown third individual stood before a towering crystal, their back facing the audience. After the awakening ceremony concluded, the classes were further categorized into 4 ranks: common, rare, hidden, and divine. Among the audience, a student noticed that Jiang Chen, the top student, stood before the crystal. A radiant white light emitted from the crystal, surprising all the other students. The divine rank was the rarest and had not been seen in their city for hundreds of years. It was rumored that when a divine rank profession appeared, it would cause unusual phenomena in the heavens and earth. The students eagerly awaited to see which class Jiang Chen would belong to, with some speculating that he might achieve the divine rank, a rarity not witnessed in generations. Jiang Chen's awakening had proven successful. The school principal approached Jang, praising him as an exceptional student and a pillar of the school. The principal had anticipated that Jang would awaken into a combat class, but he had not expected it to be of divine rank. Continuing to speak, the principal inquired about Jang's awakened profession. Jang glanced back at the principal with a look of confusion. Turning to face the principal, Jang corrected him, stating that he had not awakened into a combat class. The principal, looking shocked, speculated that Jang might be a support class instead. However, a green aura began to glow around Jang as he explained that he had awakened into the creation class, a divine rank spiritual cultivator. Raising both hands, Jang demonstrated his abilities by creating plants. His talents enabled him to accelerate the growth of flowers, grass, and small animals. The principal stood with his mouth agape, shocked by Jang's revelation of possessing divine power. He thought to himself that this was troublesome. Even though it was a divine rank, the creation class lacked combat abilities and seemed useless in that regard. The unidentified man standing beside the principal reassured Jang, advising him not to be discouraged. If Jang couldn't fight, at least he would be safe. Spiritual cultivators were highly valued in research fields, and being a divine rank added significant prestige. The principal regretted that the promised recommendation for Jiang was no longer feasible, but suggested that if Jiang pursued research, his teacher might be able to provide a recommendation letter instead. Jiang locked eyes with the principal and expressed gratitude for the information, mentioning that he would consider it. Stepping back from the principal and teacher, Jiang indicated that he had other matters to attend to and suggested that if his teachers had no further instructions, he would leave the room first. As Jiang walked away, students in the audience laughed at him. One student with brown hair couldn't believe Jiang's awakening was so weak. This student had assumed Jiang would awaken into a divine combat class, but instead, Jiang was revealed to have a creation class. Another student, covering his mouth with his hand, smirked and remarked on life's unpredictable nature. They had all assumed Jiang would awaken into a combat class, but now it seemed futile, even if he excelled in all subjects. As Jiang passed by his peers, he could hear them murmuring about how he had been treated like royalty since arriving at the school. Now, They were curious to see how long he could keep up the facade. Another student laughed at Jiang, commenting that no matter how hard Jiang worked, he would only ever be a creation class. Meanwhile, Lin, the school beauty who had consistently ranked second, had awakened to a hidden rank in the combat class. Jiang looked down with a smirk on his face, finding the other students' words harsh. He hadn't realized that awakening as a creation class would change things so drastically, but he understood that in this life, strength was paramount. Raising his hand, Jiang pondered what was wrong with being a creation class. Suddenly, a notification appeared. You have completed your profession awakening, awakened profession, spiritual cultivator, divine rank. The opening condition of the Zerg natural disaster system has been met. The initial mother insect has been unlocked. Enable the system to summon mother insects. With a piercing purple aura in his eyes, Jiang concluded that this power aligned perfectly with his system. Jiang Chen was reincarnated into a world of awakeners following his death. After the end of the Dark Era, dungeons and monsters filled the world, establishing a new era where strength was revered above all else. Born as an orphan, Jiang knew survival in this world required rigorous training and study every day until he reached the age of 18. He believed he had to rely solely on himself to make a living. Unexpectedly, Jiang awakened a system a month ago. A notification appeared, indicating that after his awakening, Jiang would be bound to the Zerg system and must complete the awakening as soon as possible. The system would be fully accessible upon successful awakening. During the Dark Era, the insect race had inflicted severe damage upon mankind, proving to be an immensely powerful adversary. Jiang learned that during the last natural disaster, 9 out of the 12 human kings had sacrificed themselves to seal the threat. In this world, strength was paramount. To Jiang, achieving power mattered more than the source, even if it meant embracing the Zerg system. With a determined gaze, Jiang activated the system. Instantly, he was transported to another realm, finding himself standing atop water. Shielding his eyes from the intense radiance with a finger to his forehead, Jiang realized that he was in his sea of consciousness. To his surprise, he found himself standing before a colossal tree glowing with white light. Further notifications appeared. Professional talent. All things evolve. Requires sacrifice. Can be activated once every 10 days and used once per target. Fruits of all things. By sacrificing, you can accumulate fruit growth progress and randomly obtain special fruits. Accelerate growth. Accelerates the growth rate of creatures, currently increased by 10%. Mainly used for accelerating creature growth. Cooldown of 8 hours after use. Jiang absorbed this information, contemplating the newfound abilities at his disposal within his sea of consciousness. Rubbing his chin thoughtfully, Jiang couldn't help but smile at the system's proactive analysis of his professional talents. While these talents lacked direct combat abilities, it appeared each one could benefit his Zerg system in unique ways. Another notification appeared, indicating that system detection was complete. Jiang was now able to begin summoning mother insects. Without hesitation, Jiang initiated the summoning process. A powerful purple aura materialized before him. Another notification followed. Summoning successful. Jiang has summoned the natural disaster level mother insect known as 9 miasma wings. Jiang observed the manifestation of 9 miasma wings with a mix of curiosity and determination, eager to explore the capabilities of this summoned creature. Notification. Mother insect, 9 miasma wings, Lord of Death from the Abyss. This creature once served as a natural disaster, triggering a catastrophic event that devastated the world before vanishing in the Third Era. The current devouring value of the mother insect is 0%, and mother insect intimacy is at 100%. Please complete the devouring process, breed offspring swarms, and unlock skills as soon as possible. Facing the massive mother insect, Jiang couldn't help but marvel at its size. The insect referred to itself as Little Nine and expressed fondness for its master. Little Nine declared hunger and eagerness to consume. Thanks to Jiang's talent, the current growth rate had been boosted by 10%. Jiang suggested that there was no need for sacrifices and proceeded with the upgrade immediately. It became apparent that the mother insect needed to feed to level up. A challenging prospect, Jang realized. A green tornado erupted in front of Jang, and he couldn't help but be surprised by the powerful aura emanating from the insect. Suddenly, piercing purple eyes locked with Jang's gaze. With a demonic aura and intense stare, the giant insect transformed into a human. Another notification sounded. Congratulations, 9 miasma wings have completed the life transition and been upgraded. Gain new abilities, feed, shares, 10 times the experience with the host. Poison mist, transforms into poison mist that corrodes everything. Sharing increases all host attributes by 20%. The now human Little Nine evolved and embraced Jang. Blushing, Jiang realized that Little Nine had indeed evolved into a human form. The talent of the spiritual cultivator could accelerate the devouring growth of the mother insect, and the experience gained from the mother insect's feed could hasten Jiang's own upgrades. Additionally, increasing all attributes by 20% would enhance combat prowess. Jiang smiled, realizing that his profession was a perfect fit for this system. Who needed a combat class now? With a smile, Jiang rested his hand on 9 miasma head. It appeared that by swiftly killing and devouring monsters, Jiang could soon amass an army of Zerg creatures. However, a recent system notification mentioned something unsettling about the Zerg, related to the Abyss and the catastrophic event of world destruction. The incomplete information indicated that this ability must be kept hidden at all costs. If discovered, it could lead to Jiang's demise. In response, Jiang decided to use his identity as a creation profession and the skills of 9 miasma wings as a cover while he devoured monsters to increase his strength. However, hiding was not Jiang's preferred approach. He desired to become strong enough to proudly display his abilities to others. Pondering over these thoughts, Jiang gazed at the tree, contemplating his path forward. Suddenly, the calm water beneath his feet began to churn aggressively. Little Nine leapt into the air, floating with a menacing glare as she sensed a nearby threat. Jiang's eyes widened as a towering figure appeared before him. The man addressed Jiang, asking if the awakening phenomenon witnessed throughout the city could be attributed to Jiang. Beads of sweat formed on Jiang's face as he looked shocked at the figure standing before him. He concluded that this person was at least a master level or above. Jiang wondered why this man was seeking him out. Students gathered around Jiang and the unknown figure. This unknown man has such a strong aura. It can be felt even from this far away. Intense discussion erupted amongst the students. Jiang couldn't help wonder the level of his mana is at. The students began to speculate that this man is here for Jiang Chen. There might be some kind of conflict as chatter filled the air. Jiang locked eyes with the man who he regarded him as uncle. This uncle has been continuously exerting pressure on him since earlier. He is exerting pressure, yet remaining silent. Jiang wondered whether the uncle was testing him as Jiang stared back at the man. Suddenly, Little Nine, licking her finger, informed Jiang, the uncle in front of them poses a threat to Jiang, and Little Nine is quite tempted to devour him. Jiang, sensing the blood thirst from Little Nine, thought this isn't good. A notification popped up. The mother insect senses that the target poses a threat to the host. The current target can provide a high level of devouring value. The mother insect is about to begin devouring the target. Suddenly, a wave of purple aura enveloped the area as the nearby students held their arms to shield their faces. Little Nine sensed the man as a threat, and now it's about to initiate an aggressive attack. The students were unable to withstand such a cold and ominous aura as they took a step back. With a sharp purple aura emitting from Jiang's left eye, he deduced that when the devouring value is too low, the mother insect becomes even more aggressive. Jiang needed to quickly find some monster for Little Nine to devour. The uncle smiled at Jiang's pressure. He came to the realization that this was the uncle's intention. He wanted to test Jiang's strength with his pressure, but it unintentionally triggered the mother insect. But fortunately, the system message stated he had temporarily suppressed the mother insect. The current devouring value of the mother insect is too low. Please start the devouring and breeding of the mother insect as soon as possible. Devouring value, 0 to 10,000. Jiang can still suppress the mother insect he thought tonight. Finally, the unknown man spoke, praising Jiang for completing his awakening and is able to withstand his pressure and even counterattack. The man continued to say that Jiang is truly worthy of a divine rank awakened and his future is limitless. The students around Jiang were surprised by Jiang's immense aura. Relieved that no one had noticed his select power, Jiang inquired who he was. The man introduced himself as Jiang, the leader of the Night Watch. Jiang didn't waste anything, and admiring Jiang's strength, he proposed if Jiang would consider joining the Night Watch, as he stretched his hand out to Jiang. Surprised by Jiang's proposal, Jiang understood that the Night Watch organization specifically tasked by Great Shiao to resist demons and beast tides. Whenever there's a beast tide or a new secret realm or dungeon is generated, the Night Watch is the first to investigate or directly eliminate them. Due to constant fighting on the front lines, the mortality rate of the Night Watch is extraordinarily high, and most people avoid it. However, it was different for Jiang. The mother insect needs to continuously devour the flesh and blood of monsters to accumulate devouring value and reproduce offsprings. Jiang currently in need of opportunities to face large monsters, and once the devouring value is full, the mother insect will start to reproduce, and who knows how much commotion it will cause. The wilderness is a good place for the breeding of the mother insect. As long as he joins the Night Watch, whether it's devouring or breeding, the risks posed by them can be easily dealt with. From this point of view, the Night Watch organization is extremely suitable for him. Jiang stated that student might have heard some rumors about the Night Watch, but those are all outdated. The surrounding students, overhearing their conversation, muttered how the Night Watch has a high mortality rate. Most people wouldn't go there, let alone Jiang Chen. Jiang continued, if Jiang is willing to join them, he will receive comprehensive training, and as divine rank, his resources will be unlimited. Jiang without hesitation shook Jiang's hand, accepting his offer. Jiang was surprised by how Jiang accepted his proposal so swiftly. Jiang, closing his eyes, confessed that he had some business to attend to today. He could sense that Little Nine was unhappy with the turn of events, as she is hungry and wanted to eat Jiang. As Jiang departed, he turned his face slightly to Jiang and stated that he will report to the Night Watch after 3 days. Jiang swiftly took off, taking to the air. Jiang, still surprised, contemplated that convincing Jiang would have been more complicated and hadn't expected it to go this smoothly. He pondered what hidden profession Jiang had, as he forgot. Turning his head, 2 figures came in Jiang's field of view. It was the 8 elder from the Martial Arts Academy. The elderly man was here to snatch Jiang to join their organization. However, Jiang stated that he was too late. The elderly man, ignoring Jiang's comment, inquired where the guy with divine rank creation class. Confused, Jiang locked eyes with the elderly man, asked what he meant by creation class. The elderly man, with a puzzled face, inquired whether Jiang is planning on letting a divine rank awakened of the creation category to join the Night Watch, just to let him die. Coming to the realization, Jiang asked what divine rank creation class is. In the middle of the street, a portal appeared as many of the residents gathered. The cause of the phenomenon in the main city was the cause of some individual. 3 individuals were conversing with each other. The older man rubbed the back of his head as he smiled because he was the cause for the portal to appear. Next to him was a purple-haired woman who seems to be scolding Uncle Wang. She asked him to lower his voice, or he might die if someone comes looking for trouble. Uncle Wang laughed, suggesting that his mouth is always running. The third individual with brunette hair casually smiled at them both, with both hands clasped behind her back. Jang arrived at the scene, easing the tension between the 2 individuals. Smiling at them, Jang stated that Uncle Wang did nothing wrong. Uncle Wang, directing his gaze at Jang, suggested that even though the creation category can't fight, companies that cultivate spiritual plants need people of the creation category. If Jang's parents were still alive, they would be proud of Jang. Jiang smiled back at Uncle Wang, thanking him for the support of everyone in the building. He definitely wouldn't forget Uncle Wang in the future. Changing the topic, Uncle Wang praised Jang for coming today, as Uncle Wang's party was just about to go to a beginner-level secret realm to get some equipment. Uncle Wang asked Jang if he would like to join them and level up together. Jang accepted the offer. As they entered the portal, a message popped up stating that Jiang had completed the team formation. The system notified Jiang that he had entered the secret realm. Stepping out of the portal, Jiang couldn't help but marvel at the interior of the secret realm. Blue flames flickered across the corridor. As they continued to walk, the system stated that they had entered the Undead zone. The secret realm guarantees a 100% drop rate of items and equipment. Experience points will be calculated after the secret realm is completed. Exiting voluntarily midway is equivalent to forfeiting experience and equipment. Uncle Wang was surprised to see undead soldiers and contemplated why the secret realm system matched them with a dungeon of this rank. Jang pondered, and also concluded that this dungeon is not going to be as easy to deal with. Shiao, behind Uncle Wang, wondered whether it was because of Jang, because he is a divine rank awakened. In order to balance it out, the celestial system matched them with a higher level in the secret realm. However, Uncle Wang chimed in, noting that Jang is of the creation category. Seeing the undead, the brunette woman suggested that they turn back. However, Uncle Wang dismissed that notion. He knew that they don't come across secret realms of this rank every day. How would they know the true strength of the undead if they didn't try? He reaffirmed that this time they might get lucky because of Jang and get some great equipment drops as he equipped his great sword. The undead soldiers roared in unison as they charged towards the group. Swinging his great sword, Uncle Wang jumped in the air as he prepared to attack the undead. As the swung his sword, he asked that Jang stand back, as the undead soldiers are more dangerous than an average C-rank monster. Once the path is clear, they can advance toward the core of the dungeon. Slicing an undead soldier in half, Uncle Wang urged Shiao to enhance his talent. Understanding Uncle Wang's request, Jiang Chen clasped her hands together, murmuring an incantation. A blue aura radiated from her hands as Uncle Wang's talents were enhanced. Gritting his teeth, Uncle Wang sliced through multiple undead soldiers. Jiang, dropping back, observed Uncle Wang and the others fighting the undead soldiers and wondered how they managed to survive. Every time they finish a dungeon, they always come back covered in wounds. Even so, Shiao has always supported him. Jiang even heard that Shiao had become an adventurer because she was forced to do so in order to cure her brother's eyes. Jiang needed to get stronger quickly, and when he makes money, he can properly thank them for supporting him. Little Nine, observing the scenes, inquired, "There are so many monsters and blood here, she wanted to devour them." Looking at the undead corpses, Jiang smiled, noting that Little Nine had already sensed it. Little Nine materialized behind him with a devilish grin. Sensing Little Nine's hunger, Jiang wanted to test some of Little Nine's ability. Little Nine's first ability is Poison Barrier Level 1. The ability is Corrosion. Jiang lifting his hand as black-purple mist materialized in the palm of his hand. Jiang released Little Nine as she jumped on the undead corpses. The monster corpses were corroded the moment they made contact. Little Nine's poison mist is so powerful. However, the level of the monsters is too low, causing the growth rate to be slow. It seems they need to devour more monsters. As Little Nine's mist devoured the corpses, Jiang looked back at the others. Uncle Wang and the other two are truly partners who have been teaming up for years. In such a short time, they've already advanced to the depths of the dungeon. Since the poison mist is an area of effect skill, and even though Jiang cannot control it precisely yet, there might be accidental injuries. Then, Jiang should just follow behind and deal with these monster corpses. Suddenly, a mini version of Little Nine materialized on Jiang's shoulder, prompting him to look in the direction she was pointing. It seems Little Nine sensed fresh blood. Turning to the direction Little Nine was pointing, Jiang could see new undead rising. These undead rising were different from the others his team had killed. It was a shadow lurker with high stats, lurking in the shadows to hunt down weaker stragglers. However, in terms of attributes, these monsters were completely inferior to Jiang, who has the attribute enhancement from the United skill. Wanting to test his skills, Jiang stretched out his hand. "Little Nine, transform into poisonous mist," he commanded, and she followed him. The shadow lurker swiftly moved towards Jiang, who stood still as dark purple mist formed around him. Jiang readied himself and jumped towards the shadow lurker, quickly closing the gap. He tagged the shadow lurker with his poison mist. The shadow lurkers looked surprised as purple mist started to envelop them. Jang raising his hand where the purple mist floated around, then clenched it into a fist, and then the shadow lurker were instantly devoured by Little Nine. Numerous system message popped up, stating that Jiang's stats have gone up by +50. Sure enough, these monsters are no match for him, and the devouring value also increases faster in this way. Little Nine sensed more shadow lurkers appearing. There are actually so many monsters hidden in this dungeon. Jiang suddenly felt worried about Uncle Wang and the others. Smiling, Jiang asked Little Nine to handle the undead. Little Nine's form started to materialize with a sharp, menacing look. A few minutes later, Jiang arrived at Uncle Wang's location along with others. As he approached, he noticed that Uncle Wang was badly injured, facing a group of monsters. Uncle Wang wielded his great sword with both hands, his back pressed against Xiao's back. Xiao extended her arms towards the monsters, poised to utilize her abilities for defense against the impending attack. As the monsters closed in on Uncle Wang and Xiao, moving swiftly to attack, Uncle Wang's blood dripped onto his face. Despite the pain, he gritted his teeth and locked eyes with the advancing monsters. He explained to Xiao that each encounter with the monsters seemed to grow more challenging, emphasizing the increasing difficulty in defeating them. Realizing the dire situation, Uncle Wang acknowledged that they couldn't survive if they persisted at this rate. He turned to Xiao and instructed her to locate Jiang and evacuate immediately. Perplexed, Xiao looked at him and asked for clarification. In that moment of distraction, an undead soldier seized the opportunity, swiftly advancing toward Uncle Wang with the intent to attack by surprise. Uncle Wang gripped the sword with one hand and glanced aside, sensing the presence of the undead soldier. Perplexed by the unfolding events, he swiftly redirected his attention toward the monster. As he observed the sword swiftly approaching his head, he clenched his teeth tightly, realizing the gravity of the situation. In that critical moment, Jiang emerged and swiftly intervened. He extended his hand towards the monster and employed Little Nine's poisonous mist ability. The mist enveloped the undead soldier, gradually corroding its body and causing it to disintegrate. As Uncle Wang witnessed this unexpected turn of events, he was both surprised and perplexed, observing the soldier's body vanish before his eyes. Uncle Wang felt a sense of bewilderment as he wondered what was unfolding. Suddenly, Jiang's voice broke through the chaos, asking if Uncle Wang and the others were all right. Startled, Uncle Wang turned his head and saw Jiang approaching. His expression tightened as he remained silent. Jiang extended his hand to the side and deployed Little Nine's poisonous mist, infecting the undead soldiers and eradicating them one by one as he neared Uncle Wang and the group. As the undead soldiers gradually dissolved from the effects of the poisonous mist, Uncle Wang shifted his focus towards Jiang. Holding his sword with one hand, Uncle Wang fixed his gaze on Jiang and inquired how a creation class, awakened individual like him, could accomplish such feats. Jiang halted before Uncle Wang, exuding a powerful aura. He turned towards him with a smile and explained that he possessed a hidden ability known as poisonous mist. With a calm demeanor, Jiang mentioned this and then extended his hand to release Little Nine's poisonous mist once more. Concerned for Uncle Wang's injury, Jiang instructed Xiao to assist him in quickly transporting Uncle Wang to the portal of the secret realm. Jiang assured them that he intended to stay behind to provide cover for their escape. His declaration left everyone speechless. Uncle Wang's expression shifted to one of surprise as he gazed at Jiang, expressing concern over the danger despite Jiang's divine class abilities. Xiao, also taken aback, urged Jiang to join them instead of remaining behind to confront the undead soldiers. As they conversed, the brunette girl brought her hand to her mouth and fell silent, her expression reflecting uncertainty. Jiang turned away from them, his body radiating a powerful aura. He glanced back slightly and reassured Uncle Wang not to worry, confident that he could handle the situation. With that, Jiang turned away from Uncle Wang and the others, his energy intensifying as he advanced towards the monsters. At that moment, a notification from the system informed everyone that the boss of the secret realm was being summoned, triggered by the number of people meeting the requirements on the final level. As Uncle Wang watched Jiang move away towards the monsters, preparing to intervene, Xiao interjected before he could voice his concern. She turned towards Uncle Wang and reminded him that Jiang was not reckless, urging him to place trust in Jiang. After careful consideration, Uncle Wang chose to trust Jang. He tossed the sword to Jang, instructing him to remember to return it later. Jang caught the sword and reassured Uncle Wang, promising to return it without fail. The sword in question was the Novice Conqueror's sword, boasting 25 speed points, 30 strength points, and a 2% attack speed bonus. Additionally, it featured an already active passive ability. Jang examined the sword closely, his gaze fixed on the monsters with determination. With Uncle Wang's sword in hand, Jang saw an opportunity to enhance the attack range of the Poisonous Mist ability. This development filled him with optimism and determination. Jang activated the Poisonous Mist ability, causing it to slowly emerge on the blade of his sword. The undead soldiers surged forward, aiming to attack Jang. However, with remarkable speed, Jang swiftly evaded their strikes. Using Uncle Wang's sword, Jang expertly sliced through the monsters, infecting them with the poisonous mist as he dispatched them into pieces. The monsters posed no challenge to Jang, who was renowned as the top swordsman in the entire school. As Jang focused on battling the undead soldiers, a much stronger monster suddenly gained momentum, charging towards him at high speed. This formidable monster unsheathed its sword and cautiously closed in on Jang, poised to launch a surprise attack. Initially unaware of the impending attack, Jang swiftly turned his head to see the monster charging towards him at great speed. With quick reflexes, Jang gathered momentum and executed a powerful leap, evading the monster's strike. The force of the monster's attack was so immense that it shattered the ground into pieces where Jiang had stood moments before. Witnessing Jiang dodge its initial attack, the monster glared at him with a murderous gaze, tightening its grip on the sword. As Jiang was airborne, the monster launched another attack. Fortunately, Jiang was able to block the attack just in time with Uncle Wang's sword. However, due to the overwhelming strength of the monster's strike, the sword lent to Jiang by Uncle Wang shattered into two halves, causing Jiang to be thrown backward from the impact. Swiftly, Jiang planted his feet on the ground, halting his momentum. He glanced to the side and was surprised to see that Uncle Wang's sword had shattered. The boss's strength exceeded Jiang's expectations. More concerned about the broken sword than the formidable boss, Jiang fretted over how to explain the situation to Uncle Wang. The boss of the secret realm was known as the Undead King, a formidable opponent at level 15. With sword in hand, the Undead King fixed a murderous gaze on Jiang. Suddenly, the Undead King's body began to vibrate, and in an instant, it reappeared behind Jiang, poised to launch a devastating attack. Upon sensing the Undead King's sudden movement, Jiang felt a wave of terror and questioned how the boss had achieved such incredible speed. With determination in his eyes, Jiang locked his gaze on the Undead King and summoned Little Nine for assistance. Just as the Undead King's sword was about to strike Jiang, Little Nine materialized and seized hold of the blade, intercepting the attack. Little Nine fixed her gaze on the Undead King and inquired of Jiang if she could eliminate him. Jiang responded affirmatively without hesitation. Delighted by this permission, Little Nine swiftly shattered the blade of the Undead King's sword with her bare hand. She extended her arms outward, her body emanating a potent energy that radiated in all directions. Upon witnessing the destruction of its sword, the Undead King grew wary. Deprived of its weapon, the Undead King opted to attack with its fists, seizing the opportunity presented by Little Nine's distraction. It swiftly advanced toward her, intending to catch her off guard. Suddenly, Little Nine's eyes snapped open, and her body underwent a dramatic transformation. With a determined glare, Little Nine locked eyes with the Undead King and deployed her tentacles in self-defense. Taking an offensive stance, she launched a barrage of attacks against the Undead King, using her sharp tentacles, each strike as deadly as a sword. Gradually, her powerful tentacles began to dismantle the body of the Undead King. She began by severing the left arm of the Undead King, followed swiftly by the right arm. Little Nine impaled her tentacle into the head of the Undead King, causing the boss's body to collapse to the ground. Holding the head of the Undead King in her hand, Little Nine's body radiated with powerful energy as she approached Jiang. Witnessing Little Nine's impressive display of power, Jiang couldn't help but smile in amazement. He marveled at how calm Little Nine remained in the face of such a formidable secret realm boss. Jiang anticipated that defeating the boss would prompt the portal to open. As Little Nine approached Jiang, an energy crystal materialized in front of him. As Jiang gazed at the crystal, he pondered its purpose and origin. The energy crystal ascended into the sky, gradually drawing magic from the corpses of the defeated monsters. Jiang watched in amazement as this process unfolded before him. After several seconds, the energy crystal emitted a brilliant glow, summoning a colossal monster into existence. The monstrous entity that emerged was known as the Undead Tyrant, towering over Little Nine and Jiang by 20 times their size. Fixing a menacing gaze upon them, the Undead Tyrant directed its attention towards Jiang and Little Nine. Jiang, observing the transformation of the energy crystal into this colossal creature, began to speculate whether the energy crystal itself was the true boss of the secret realm. Jiang swiftly turned his head, gritting his teeth, and commanded Little Nine to target and destroy the energy crystal within the Undead Tyrant. As the monstrous creature fixated its gaze on Jiang, it let out a deafening roar. The Undead Tyrant swung a mace at Little Nine, but with remarkable agility, she leaped off the wall, narrowly evading the attack. Having evaded the initial attack, the Undead Tyrant readied itself to strike again. It lunged at Little Nine once more, but she swiftly leaped into the air, narrowly avoiding the attack. As a result, the monster's mace slammed into the ground, shattering it into pieces while Little Nine remained airborne. With a fierce expression, Little Nine fixed her intense gaze on the Undead Tyrant and extended her hands, sending sharp tentacles swiftly toward it. Despite her relentless assault, the boss effortlessly dodged every attack as if it were nothing. Jiang was astonished to see the massive Undead Tyrant move with such incredible speed. Gritting his teeth, Jiang contemplated a strategy. Surveying the ground, he noticed several plants scattered among the debris. Seeing this opportunity, Jiang decided to leverage his divine creation class known as Spiritual Master. Focusing intently on the plants, he realized he had only one opportunity to execute his plan. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Jiang acknowledged the incredible speed and power of the Undead Tyrant's attacks. As the monstrous creature lifted its mace from the ground and prepared to strike, Jiang likened it to a rampaging bull beyond control. However, he recognized this frenzy as a potential weakness. Meanwhile, Little Nine attempted to assail the Undead Tyrant with her sharp tentacles, but the creature countered by spinning its body at high speed, effortlessly evading her attacks and gaining momentum. Advancing rapidly, the Undead Tyrant closed in on Jiang. Within moments, it launched itself into a mighty leap. Jiang raised his gaze toward the approaching creature, realizing the impending danger. He had sensed it before. There were numerous hidden passages beneath the ground. As the Undead Tyrant soared through the air, it seized its mace with both hands, swiftly closing the distance toward Jiang. As the Undead Tyrant closed in for an attack, Jiang observed its gradual approach. Waiting for the opportune moment, he prepared to employ his talent to halt its advance. When the Undead Tyrant drew near enough, Jiang focused intently, determining that the time was right. Extending his hand toward the ground, a green symbol materialized in his palm. Harnessing his talent, Jiang summoned the concealed spiritual roots from beneath the ground. With his gaze fixed upon the Undead Tyrant, he directed his hand towards it with determination. In mere moments, 4 spiritual roots emerged from the earth, lancing toward the Undead Tyrant. Piercing its body, the roots ensnared the creature in mid-air, immobilizing it completely. With his hand outstretched and his body enveloped in a potent aura, Jiang directed his attention to Little Nine, signaling that it was her moment to act. Swiftly, Little Nine approached the Undead Tyrant, her hand landing on its head, while her other hand readied her claws. Fixing the creature with a deadly glare, she affirmed her understanding to Jiang with a resolute, "Understood, Master." As Little Nine prepared to strike, the Undead Tyrant's expression shifted dramatically, sensing impending danger. Despite its attempts to defend itself, it proved futile. In a swift motion, Little Nine surged forward, her sharp claws and tentacles slashing through the air. With precision, she pierced the creature's body, cleaving it in half and obliterating the spiritual roots in the process. Within moments, the lifeless form of the Undead Tyrant crumpled to the ground. "Jiang, with his hands still raised towards the sky, maintained control over both the spiritual roots and the tyrant's corpse. A sense of pride swelled within him at his victory over the formidable foe. Knowing that his ability was reliable, Jiang felt reassured that he could continue to be a formidable force in battles as long as he utilized his skills effectively. Lost in contemplation, Jiang was interrupted by a system notification indicating that the growth acceleration was now on an 8-hour cooldown. Consequently, the spiritual roots began to diminish gradually. Moments later, the core materialized from the undead tyrant's corpse. Recognizing its significance, Jiang swiftly resolved to destroy it without delay. In a swift motion, Jiang intercepted the core before it could escape, seizing it firmly in his grasp. With determination, he clenched his fist tightly, causing the core to fracture into pieces. As the shards descended to the earth, Jiang fixed his gaze upon his clenched fist, harboring a resolute expression as he contemplated that this marked the conclusion. Amidst the aftermath, a flurry of system notifications cascaded, heralding Jiang's triumph in clearing the C-rank secret realm known as the Temple of the Undead. Swiftly, the system computed his contributions, culminating in the successful generation of the secret realm score. Despite starting at level 0 and bearing the class of Spiritual Master, Jiang Chen achieved an impressive S rating in this secret realm. Wang Ye, a level 12 swordsman, secured a B rating, while Liu Yang, a level 11 warlock, achieved an A rating. Yi Qian, a level 10 boxer, also earned a B rating. As the heavenly system commenced the computation of team rewards, a window materialized before Jiang, signaling the forthcoming rewards. After a brief pause, the system completed the generation of team rewards, prolonging the window's appearance. Jiang was presented with several weapon options to consider. The first was a dagger, followed by a scepter, then a heavy axe, a lighter axe, and finally a hammer. As the spiritual root gradually receded into the ground, Jiang found himself gazing at the system window, lost in contemplation for several moments. He reached into the system window and selected the dagger. As he retrieved the weapon, its statistics became visible. It was Edmu's swift dagger, ranked D, providing the user with 50 attack points and a 5% speed bonus. The dagger was associated with swords and offered 2 professional attributes. Inspecting the blade with one hand, Jiang found it satisfactory and resolved to offer it as recompense for Uncle Wang. His gaze shifted to the array of equipment displayed in the system window. It dawned on him quickly that all the gear catered to combat needs. Uncertain if there was anything tailored for creation classes, Jiang leaned closer to the system window. He reached in and began scrutinizing the attributes of each item. Opting for the hammer, he extracted it from the system, but upon lifting it, the weight caused it to slip from his grasp, thudding heavily onto the ground. The hammer, dubbed Call of the King, bestowed upon the user a formidable 100 strength points, albeit at the cost of deducting 100 agility points due to its heft. Its unique attribute allowed for a 10% chance to trigger critical damage amplified 5-fold. As Jiang struggled to hoist the hammer, he sensed a novel feeling creeping over him. A notification popped up, indicating that he was receiving experience points as a reward. Jiang swiftly comprehended that the system was granting him the experience gained from the secret realm. Despite the hammer's weight, Jiang felt the newfound experience gradually empowering him to lift it. In mere moments, he effortlessly hoisted the hammer, as if it weighed nothing. Another notification from the system revealed that the United ability was activated, boosting all of Jiang's attributes by 20%. Surrounded by a potent aura, he held the hammer in one hand while casually slipping the other into his pocket, his gaze fixed on the hammer. Benefiting from the passive ability of the Insect Mother, he had ascended to level 6, enhancing the potency of the United effect. With each level gained, he noticed a marked improvement in his physical combat prowess. Lost in contemplation, Jiang was drawn back to the present as Little Nine tugged at his shirt, demanding his attention. Jiang's reverie was interrupted by Little Nine's voice. She gestured towards the system window, inquiring if she could consume all the rewards. Setting the hammer down, Jiang met her gaze, contemplating her request for a moment. Turning towards her, Jiang explained that the equipment wasn't edible for Little Nine. It was meant for Uncle Wang and the others to trade for money. He warned her that eating it would give her a stomachache. Little Nine, upon hearing this, dropped one hand behind her back and touched her lips with the other, her expression shifting to one of sadness as she looked at Jiang. Turning her body towards the undead tyrant's corpse, Little Nine inquired if she could consume it. Jiang realized he had overlooked the value of devouring the remains of the boss. Surrounded by a potent aura, he nodded and granted Little Nine permission to devour it, recognizing that it rightfully belonged to her. Little Nine wasted no time in approaching the colossal corpse of the undead tyrant. Observing its immense size, Jiang couldn't help but wonder if the boss was perhaps too large. Considering its bulk, he speculated that it might take Little Nine quite some time to corrode it using her poisonous mist. Little Nine stretched her arms wide, closed her eyes, and informed Jiang that she was about to feast. Instantly, her body began to tremble, reverting to her natural state within moments. Once transformed, she fixed the undead tyrant's corpse with an intense, predatory stare, her mouth opening as she moved closer to it. Despite the colossal size of the undead tyrant's corpse, it appeared minuscule compared to the mother insect's natural form. Jiang watched in awe as she reverted to her original state to consume the corpse, a sight that filled him with dread. With her mouth agape, she charged toward the boss's remains, emitting a series of ferocious roars as she approached. As Little Nine devoured the corpse, a powerful gust of wind swept through the area. Jiang seized the opportunity to retrieve all the equipment from the system window. With one hand clutching the hammer, he shielded his face from the wind generated by Little Nine's roaring. Although the noise was deafening, they were fortunate to be within the confines of the secret realm. Had this occurred in the bustling main city, their actions would have undoubtedly attracted unwanted attention, regardless of their efforts to conceal themselves. Upon finishing the feast, a system notification emerged, awarding Jiang with 400 devouring points. As he shielded his face with his arm, Jiang noticed that the devouring value was escalating at a rapid pace. As anticipated, the boss's meat indeed held unique value. Jiang understood that consuming more boss-type monsters was imperative to boost the devouring value further. Lost in contemplation, he was suddenly alerted by approaching footsteps. Swiveling around, he gritted his teeth upon realizing that Uncle Wang and the others were drawing near, likely drawn by the commotion caused by Little Nine. With the devouring value standing at 8,876 points, Jiang approached Little Nine and urged her to revert to her other form swiftly. Little Nine's smile faded slightly as she complied with his request, a hint of regret in her expression. Jiang felt a pang of disappointment knowing that the devouring value was tantalizingly close to being maxed out. Within moments, Uncle Wang and the others reached their location. As Uncle Wang noticed the equipment scattered on the ground, he understood that Jiang had successfully completed the level. Jiang clarified to Uncle Wang the situation with his broken sword, presenting him with the dagger as compensation. Uncle Wang accepted the dagger readily, acknowledging its rarity. He assured Jiang that he wouldn't hold him responsible for the damage to his equipment. Approaching Jiang, Uncle Wang revealed that the necklace was another valuable item, worth a considerable sum if sold. Ye Qian, intrigued, inquired how Jiang had managed to defeat the boss single-handedly. Jiang scratched his head sheepishly and explained that his poison appeared to have a particularly potent effect on formidable monsters like the boss. With a solemn expression, Jiang directed his gaze downwards. The secret realm had been thoroughly conquered, but once a secret realm was cleared, it wouldn't reset. Acquiring the devouring value from another boss would be crucial to kick-starting the insect swarm breeding. If Jiang aimed to encounter a new boss, his only option was to venture into the desert. Observing Jiang, Uncle Wang expressed regret that Jiang was destined for the research department. Despite not even reaching level 1, he had already vanquished a boss monster, suggesting significant potential for strength once he leveled up. After sharing his thoughts, Uncle Wang inquired about Jiang's future plans. Turning towards Uncle Wang, Jiang smiled and revealed that he hadn't mentioned it earlier to avoid causing worry. In truth, he had decided to join the Night's Watch. Surprised, Uncle Wang sought confirmation, questioning Jiang's sincerity in his decision. Jiang nodded, affirming his intention to join the Night's Watch. Jiang disclosed his plan to depart for the Night's Watch in 3 days' time. Before his departure, he aimed to boost his level, intending to venture into the wilderness for further leveling. Uncle Wang's astonishment was evident, while Ye Qian reacted with disbelief, her hand covering her mouth at the thought of Jiang embarking on such a perilous endeavor. As Liu Yang extended her hand towards him, her expression grave with concern, Jiang interrupted her, his fist clenched tightly. In response, Little Nine's poisonous mist began to emanate from the palm of his hand, a silent testament to his determination. Assuring Liu Yang not to worry about him, Jiang expressed confidence in his abilities and urged them to focus their concerns on the looming threat of the monsters. Later that day, Jiang boarded the train, arriving at the city's outskirts a few hours later. Prompted by the conductor, those bound for the wilderness disembarked the train. Stepping off the train, Jiang wrapped himself in a cloak to blend into the crowd, keen on avoiding undue attention. Pausing to survey his surroundings, his gaze fixed on a bustling bridge teeming with awakeners. Since awakening the system, Jiang found his appetite strangely heightened. What astonished him even more was that despite its instability, his devouring value exhibited a slight uptick with each meal. As Jiang nibbled on a loaf of bread, his devouring value incremented by 2 points. Little Nine materialized beside him, grimacing at the bread as she commented on its lack of flavor. Determined to find her something more palatable, Jiang resolved to seek out a suitable meal for Little Nine. With a gesture, he conjured a map and unfolded it before Little Nine. The generosity of Uncle Wang surprised him. Not only had he provided the map, but also a crucial storage ring and additional guidance upon learning of Jiang's journey to the desert. These provisions proved invaluable to Jiang. He ventured forth across the bridge, mindful of Uncle Wang's counsel. In the wilderness, the influence of the Heavenly Way rendered electronic devices useless, akin to an apocalyptic landscape where monsters roamed freely, migrating to their nests without restraint. The maps provided had a fleeting utility. Devoid of updated intelligence, locating monster clusters, let alone bosses, posed a formidable challenge. Creatures like firebirds and thunder rhinoceroses, conspicuous in their movements, were among the most prevalent. Areas marked with question marks were to be steered clear of, deemed perilous nests with elevated risk levels. Uncle Wang had advised Jiang that the Goblin Dungeon would be the most fitting choice. Low-leveled, abundant in monsters, and less crowded. As Jiang scrutinized the map, he tightened his fist, sporting a smile, resolved to embark on the journey. However, amidst his contemplations, a voice abruptly interrupted, commanding him to halt. Jiang tensed up, swiveling around to face the source of the voice. A cloaked figure stood before him, hand resting firmly on Jiang's shoulder, eyes fixated with intensity. He questioned why Jiang had ignored his calls, expressing a desire to inquire about something important. The cloaked man inquired if Jiang had spotted a girl with golden hair nearby. Jiang's gaze sharpened, and he denied seeing anyone fitting that description, cautioning the man to mind his words. Simultaneously, Little Nine's poisonous mist began to emit from Jiang's shoulder, adhering to the man's hand. The cloaked man swiftly withdrew his hand from Jiang's shoulder, a perplexed expression crossing his face. Examining his hand, he clenched his teeth, pondering if this substance was poison. He found it puzzling, as Jiang didn't appear to have reached a level capable of such an attack. Nonetheless, he remained unperturbed, knowing that Jiang, at his current level, couldn't pose a threat to him, a level 27 main defense warrior. With a dismissive gesture, Jiang turned his back and walked away, advising the man to seek a healer promptly, cautioning him about the severity of the poison. He added a word of caution about maintaining vigilance. Despite Jiang's departure, the man couldn't contain his anger, demanding Jiang's attention and questioning his authority to leave. Hearing this, Jiang fixed his gaze on the man, his expression turning fierce. As the man approached, emanating a formidable aura, he leveled a penetrating stare at Jiang, questioning his audacity in crossing paths with the Shiao family. Jiang's mind raced, contemplating if the man was alluding to the Shiao family from the Battle of Heaven. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like the video. At the man's words, Jiang locked eyes with him, sensing the impending confrontation. True to his intuition, the man lunged forward, aiming a powerful strike, but Jiang was one step ahead. With swift agility, he sidestepped the attack, watching as the man's fist crashed into the ground with destructive force, fracturing it into shards. As Jiang soared through the air, distancing himself from the man, he shielded his face with one hand, eyeing the furious assailant with intensity. Thoughts raced through his mind as he pondered the significance of the Shiao family. The man's demeanor betrayed a deep-seated rage, prompting Jiang to recognize the gravity of the situation. With gritted teeth and a menacing glare, the man surged forward with alarming velocity, closing the gap between them in a flash. Drawing his sword, the man commended Jiang's agility, acknowledging his opponent's swiftness. Sensing the escalation, Jiang threw back his hood, revealing his determined expression. With a swift gesture, he summoned Little Nine's poisonous mist, shrouding the area. Locking eyes with the man, Jiang signaled to Little Nine that there was no need to restrain themselves any longer. Upon Jiang's command, Little Nine materialized from the swirling mist, her gaze fixed on the man with a lethal intensity. Understanding Jiang's directive, she acknowledged with a silent nod. The sight of the poisonous mist seemed to stoke the man's aggression further. He bellowed at Jiang, questioning whether he truly believed he could intimidate him again with the same tactic. Before Jiang could enact his retaliation, a newcomer intervened, addressing the man as Zheng Tai and emphasizing the need for discretion. At the sound of the voice, Zheng Tai's demeanor shifted abruptly. He gritted his teeth, slowly turning to face the newcomer, a palpable sense of fear washing over him. Jiang watched in silence, curious about the unfolding situation. A figure with blue hair emerged from behind Zheng Tai, draped in a hood. Clearly irate, he fixed Zheng Tai with a menacing glare, demanding to know why he was present instead of searching for someone as instructed. Zheng Tai visibly trembled, his fear evident as he struggled to offer an explanation. Before Zheng Tai could utter a word, the man cut him off, spinning around with a disdainful glance. He branded Zheng Tai as worthless, blaming him for nothing but trouble. The words struck Zheng Tai like a blow, rendering him even more terrified. Before he could react, the man delivered a powerful punch beneath his chin, leaving Zheng Tai reeling from the impact. Zheng Tai staggered back, blood trickling from his nose. The man, a member of the Shiao family, exuded a formidable aura. He fixed his gaze on Zheng Tai, his expression murderous, as he reiterated that Zheng Tai was no more than a mere lapdog of the Shiao family, unworthy of invoking its name. Zheng Tai swiftly dropped to his knees, bowing before the man and begging for forgiveness. He promised not to repeat his mistake and assured that there would be no further disruptions. Meanwhile, Jiang discreetly donned his hood and observed the scene without detecting the man's presence. It quickly dawned on Jiang that this individual posed a greater threat than the earlier warrior. As Zheng Tai rose to his feet, the man approached Jiang with an apologetic tone, attributing his companion's behavior to his aggressive tendencies. He offered compensation for the trouble caused. Jiang assured him there was no need for concern, declining any offer of reparation. Upon hearing the man's inquiry, Jiang was met with a smile as the man stepped closer. His demeanor exuded a potent energy as he locked eyes with Jiang, proposing a joint journey to the desert. Jiang, maintaining his silence, returned the man's gaze for several moments, contemplating his offer. Turning his back on them, Jiang gradually distanced himself, declining the man's invitation, expressing his preference for solitude on his journey. Observing Jiang's departure in silence, the man found him intriguing, aware of Jiang's awakening as a spiritual master, a divine class of creation. As Jiang distanced himself, Zheng Tai rose to his feet and inquired about continuing his search. The man's gaze shifted towards Zheng Tai, and with a steady stare, he dismissed the idea, noting that the opportunity had likely elapsed by now. Having deciphered the clues, the man deduced that the girl they sought had fled the city and likely aimed to traverse the desert toward the nearest station. He removed his hood, revealing his face, and instructed Zheng Tai not to let her reach the inn alive. Ordering him to rally all dispersed servants, the man departed, leaving Zheng Tai to nod in acknowledgement and comply with the command. With a nod and a silent acknowledgement, Zheng Tai accepted the directive. The spread of humanity across the planet had birthed numerous cities. Yet, with the awakened era came the intrusion of beasts, secret realms, and dungeons, necessitating the continual adaptation and fortification of human settlements against these powerful forces. In the current era, Only those awakened individuals driven by the pursuit of power ventured back to these regions to battle monsters, ascend in levels, and amass riches. These regions are now commonly referred to as the Wildlands. As Jiang traversed the terrain, he encountered a swarm of rats. After several hours, he reached a desolate and dilapidated section of the city. As he journeyed, Jiang began to sense a growing disorientation. Despite his intended destination being the goblin beast's nest, he found himself wandering for hours without arrival. Nightfall had descended, yet he remained far from his goal. Little Nine, sensing her hunger, caught a rat and perched atop Jiang's head, though she soon discovered it was an unsatisfactory meal. Little Nine discerned that not all prey was palatable, realizing her discerning taste. As they traversed, Jiang noticed a stark contrast. While he had encountered numerous formidable monsters earlier, the area now seemed devoid of them. Such creatures yielded negligible devouring points. Time was of the essence, and Jiang knew he couldn't afford to dawdle, lest it jeopardize his enrollment in the Night Watch. As Jiang pressed forward, his focus intensified, lost in contemplation. Suddenly, the sky darkened and rain poured down. In the midst of this deluge, a colossal spider lurking nearby caught sight of Jiang. Descending with deliberate slowness, it fixed a murderous gaze upon him. Jiang extended his hand to the side, feeling the raindrops patter against his skin. Recognizing the magical essence within the rain, he understood that he had stumbled upon an area rife with beast lairs. Despite the initial misstep in locating the nest, he couldn't contain his satisfaction at the discovery. Now, all that remained was to swiftly locate the monster and fill the devouring gauge for the first time. Moments later, Jiang glanced back and spotted the creature edging closer. Their eyes locked, and an intense silence fell between them, stretching out for several seconds. Little Nine materialized, her gaze fixed on the approaching monster. She inquired of Jiang whether he wished for her assistance. Jiang lifted his head slightly, focusing on the creature. He responded that intervention wasn't needed, as the monster's level appeared low, its size only slightly larger than the others they had encountered. Seizing the opportunity, the monster landed and readied its sharp appendages for an assault. With a menacing glare, it lunged at Jiang with its piercing limbs, yet Jiang deftly evaded the strikes with nimble leaps. Then, capitalizing on the opening, he gathered his strength and leaped with great force. In a flash, Jiang found himself atop the monster, his fist tightly clenched as he readied to strike. The creature, catching sight of Jiang, trembled in fear, its mind racing with confusion. With a powerful blow, Jiang struck the monster, sending its body crashing to the ground, life extinguished, and the floor shattered into pieces. As Jiang pondered, Little Nine emerged, her hand resting on her forehead as she delivered news of more monsters' arrival. Startled by her voice, Jiang broke free from his reverie, casting a glance to the side, his surprise evident. The resounding impact of his attack had drawn the attention of other lurking monsters in the vicinity. Standing atop the monster's lifeless body, Jiang noticed the encroaching giant spiders. Reacting swiftly, he summoned the dagger he acquired in the secret realm, using the poisonous mist. With determination in his eyes, he turned to Little Nine and declared that it was time for a feast. Their gazes turned lethal as they locked onto the approaching giant spiders. Jiang checked in with Little Nine, who affirmed her readiness without a moment's hesitation. Activating Little Nine's poisonous mist, Jiang swiftly charged forward, dagger in hand. In a blur of motion, he struck at the spiders, slicing through their bodies and infecting them with the deadly mist. With each battle, their levels surged rapidly. Continuing to engage monsters along their journey back promised at least 2 more level advancements. In mere moments, the creatures fell, either succumbing to mortal wounds or the corrosive effects of the poisonous mist. In an instant, the monsters lay lifeless, forming a mound of corpses. Jiang approached and requested that Little Nine consume the remains of these creatures. She eagerly complied, extending her arms wide. Suddenly she paused, her attention drawn to something approaching, a presence large, potent, and promisingly satisfying. At Little Nine's revelation, Jiang swiftly turned his gaze in the same direction, noting her heightened excitement. It dawned on him that the approaching entity must be the boss. Facing the direction of the impending threat, he extended his hand, his expression hardening with determination. With a gesture, he commanded Little Nine to attack, her anticipation mirrored in his own resolve. As the boss drew nearer, its silhouette emerged from the mist. Little Nine, undeterred, launched her assault. Soon after, agonized cries pierced the air. Jiang, hearing a distinctly feminine voice from the creature, turned his attention towards it, his expression a mix of surprise and confusion. Little Nine's misjudgment became apparent as the approaching figure revealed herself to be a woman, not the anticipated boss. Jiang's attack inadvertently caused her clothing to tear, and she collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Surveying the scene, Jiang pondered the nature of this mysterious individual, unsure of her origins or capabilities. After a few moments, the woman stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. Gazing up at the sky, a startled expression crossed her face as she puzzled over her surroundings and the events unfolding. With a steadying hand, she pushed herself upright, the other instinctively finding her head as she gradually pieced together the situation, questioning the unfamiliar surroundings. She recalled not arriving at this place, her hand still resting on her head as she endeavored to make sense of it all. Jang drew near, settling beside her, his elbows on his knees as he closed his eyes, a gentle smile gracing his lips as he inquired if she was awake. At the sound of Jiang's voice, she snapped to attention, pondering his identity. Acting swiftly, she rose to her feet and quickly distanced herself from him, assuming a defensive posture. Locking eyes with Jiang, she demanded to know his identity and urged him not to come any closer. Rising to his feet, he turned towards her and, in a composed tone, reassured her that she need not fear, explaining that he was merely a career transitioner who had ventured into the desert to combat monsters. He further assured her that his intentions were not to cause harm. Upon closer inspection, she recollected Jiang's identity. Placing a hand over her heart, she gestured towards Jiang with the other, fixing him with a piercing gaze as she accused him of being the assailant from a prior encounter. Jiang's demeanor shifted to one of unease upon hearing this. He closed his eyes momentarily, then with a rueful smile, offered his apologies, admitting that he had mistaken her for a monster in the past. Caught off guard by Jiang's attractiveness, she felt a warmth spread across her cheeks. Turning towards him, she questioned how anyone could compare lovely girls like herself to monsters, finding his assumption presumptuous. Panic surged within her, prompting her to frantically check her features, ensuring her nose and ears were intact. Jiang remained silent, watching her closely. Recalling the force he had exerted during the attack, he marveled at her resilience as she appeared unscathed, almost as if the incident hadn't occurred. Pondering her identity and how she had endured his assault, he found himself increasingly intrigued. After a few moments, reassured by her lack of injuries, she gradually calmed down. She extended her hand to the side, and the golden ring adorning her finger gleamed, radiating a vibrant green energy. This ring, akin to a timepiece, illuminated, displaying the current time. Observing the hour, she recognized that she had lingered too long. With a swift decision, she turned away from Jiang, briskly striding away, determined to depart before anyone could apprehend her. As she gradually distanced herself, Jiang maintained his silence, his gaze fixed upon her, pondering the reasons behind her retreat and the identity of those pursuing her. The woman edged further away, yet suddenly halted in her tracks. With a hand pressed against her mouth, she nervously began to gnaw at her nails. It didn't take Jiang long to sense the unease radiating from the woman. Drawing closer, he observed her jittery demeanor and inquired if everything was all right. As Tara's grip tightened, she subtly glanced back, eyes shut, offering a strained smile. She explained that there were monsters up ahead, and lacking prowess in combat, she opted to step back and leave Jiang to confront them. Within moments, her nervousness dissipated, and she pivoted away from him once more, offering a farewell wave. "That's it," she declared, resolved to depart. Witnessing her abrupt departure, Jiang's countenance shifted dramatically. With a perplexed expression, he watched her go, musing on the apparent waste of her acting talents. As the rain began to fall, the woman departed. Jiang wandered the vicinity, contemplating the situation. The prospect of encountering monsters ahead pleased him. It aligned with his intentions, as these particular monsters posed no challenge for him. However, despite the opportunity to earn devouring points, he acknowledged a looming issue. Jiang's expression turned solemn as he angled his head, contemplating the challenge of confronting other job changers. The desert had long been a lawless domain, attracting individuals engaged in acts of violence and theft. Doubts crept into his mind regarding the wisdom of apprehending the woman he had encountered earlier, considering the risks involved. As Jang immersed himself in contemplation, Little Nine emerged. Pointing ahead with a solemn expression, she alerted him to the approaching horde of monsters. Rather than feeling fear or contemplating retreat, Jiang's face lit up with delight. Turning slightly towards Little Nine, he expressed his satisfaction upon learning about the multitude of monsters ahead. His elation was short-lived. Turning his head to the side, he was met with a sight that sent shock coursing through him. Hundreds of giant spiders emerged before him, resembling the ones he had recently vanquished. Among them loomed a colossal specimen, its gaze dripping with malice as it fixed its eyes on him. As potent energy enveloped Jiang's body, he surveyed the spiders and realized the gravity of the situation. Engaging a few of them individually wouldn't pose a challenge, but the sheer number now converging upon him rendered direct confrontation impossible. As the giant spiders inched closer, he maintained a steady, focused gaze upon them, acknowledging the woman's earlier warning with growing certainty. Despite being encircled by monsters, Jiang experienced a sense of relief. He found solace in battling these creatures over engaging with other job changers. As the giant spiders grew increasingly agitated, their murderous intent driving them forward with haste, Jiang couldn't suppress his satisfaction. With the impending opportunity to gain devouring value, he welcomed their swift advance without hesitation. Jiang drew his two daggers, his body radiating an intense and stifling energy as he locked his gaze onto the approaching monsters. Instructing Little Nine to unleash the poisonous mist, she promptly complied with a firm nod. Without hesitation, the mist began to seep from the blades clutched in his hands. In an instant, the giant spiders closed in on him, jaws gaping wide in preparation for an assault. Despite the enveloping poisonous mist around Jiang's form, he remained motionless for several heartbeats. As one of the colossal arachnids lunged towards him, Jiang's movements blurred with incredible speed. Leveraging the daggers and Little Nine's toxic mist, he surged forward, slicing through the spider's body in a single swift motion, infecting it with the venomous haze in the process. Mid-air, Jiang cast a fierce glare back at the monsters, his expression lethal as he contemplated their newfound speed, a perplexing development. His attention momentarily diverted, another giant spider seized the opportunity, hurtling towards him with alarming velocity. As the giant spider inched closer, its gaze filled with malice, poised for an assault, Jiang swiftly sensed its presence. Without delay, he glanced back, catching sight of its attempt to launch a surprise attack, eliciting a hint of surprise from him. However, the giant spider's ill-fated attempt would not catch Jiang off guard. Just as the giant spider poised for action, Jiang sprang into action with lightning speed, slicing its body into pieces with his daggers in a blur of motion. The fragmented remnants cascaded to the ground as Jiang gracefully landed moments later. Standing with both daggers gripped firmly in his hands, his body emanated the toxic mist conjured by Little Nine. With a gaze filled with determination, he fixated on the spider's lifeless form, sensing something amiss. Despite swiftly thwarting the attack and dispatching the creature in an instant, he noticed a small cut on his abdomen, a testament to the brief struggle. As the smaller spiders surged forward with increasing speed, Jiang swiftly grasped the realization that these monsters were coordinating their efforts, a troubling revelation. Upon closer examination, Jiang noticed a spider that stood out starkly from the others. With 6 eyes and a considerably larger size, he swiftly deduced it as the boss among them. This realization prompted him to ponder whether this commanding figure was orchestrating the actions of the others. In the blink of an eye, thousands of spiders materialized, encircling Jiang. As Little Nine's toxic mist emanated from his body, Jiang fixed his gaze upon the boss spider. Rather than fleeing, he remained rooted in place. It dawned on Jiang that the thousands of monsters inhabiting the area shared a unified strategy, both in their sheer numbers and their tactics. This realization shed light on why this particular area remained untouched by others. With a determined expression, Jiang fixed his gaze on the boss, contemplating that the key to defeating the swarm of smaller monsters lay in vanquishing their leader. However, as he assessed the vast number of creatures surrounding him, he acknowledged the formidable challenge ahead. Lost in his thoughts, Jiang was startled as Little Nine emerged from the toxic mist, placing her hand on his shoulder to draw his attention. Emerging gradually, her expression grave, Little Nine directed her gaze squarely at the boss spider. With a serious demeanor, she conveyed to Jiang her comprehension of the situation, disclosing that the monsters were attempting to usurp their master. Jiang's confusion deepened at this revelation. He turned his head slightly towards her, inquiring about the meaning behind her words. Little Nine regarded the monsters with disdain, finding their arrogance remarkable. With a sweeping gesture, she raised her hands to her sides, tilting her head back to the sky, and released a resounding roar. At the sound of Little Nine's roar, the spiders finally recognized her as the insect mother. Without hesitation, the smaller spiders scattered in disarray, fleeing at the sight of their perceived leader's authority. Jiang found himself somewhat taken aback, pondering whether the monster's behavior stemmed from their insect-like nature. Little Nine approached Jiang, inclining her head slightly towards him as she revealed that she had severed the connection between the boss spider and its underlings. Jiang hadn't anticipated that Little Nine's abilities could be applied in such a manner. With the monsters thrown into disarray, Jiang anticipated that defeating them would now be significantly easier. Brandishing his two daggers to each side, he fixed the boss with a deadly gaze. Expressing his appreciation to Little Nine for her effective intervention, he determined that the moment had come to eradicate the boss once and for all. Upon hearing Jiang's command, Little Nine reverted to her original form. Fixing the boss with a lethal glare, she responded with a simple yet obedient, "Understood, good master." As Jiang's body continued to emit the toxic mist conjured by Little Nine, he gathered momentum, leaping forward with determination, urging her to follow closely. In a flash, Jiang swiftly dispatched several monsters with his daggers, severing their bodies into fragments. With the boss's influence no longer a concern, the remaining monsters descended into chaos. Jiang surged forward at high speed, darting among the creatures and methodically slicing through their ranks with his daggers. With the monsters now scattered and disarrayed, Jiang recognized that they no longer posed a threat, allowing him to proceed without further delay. Dispatching several monsters within moments, he propelled himself forward with a powerful leap. Advancing rapidly towards the boss, Jiang focused his thoughts on the singular objective that remained. The boss unleashed a menacing roar, its gaze fixed fiercely on Jiang. Undeterred, Jiang met its stare head-on, refusing to back down. Mentally preparing for the impending clash, he recognized the boss as the ultimate source of devouring value. Despite the boss's attempts to defend itself, its efforts proved futile against Jiang's determined assault. Moments before it could react, Jiang descended upon the boss, launching a rapid assault on its head with both daggers, infusing it with Little Nine's toxic mist. Despite the size disparity, within seconds, the boss succumbed to its injuries, collapsing to the ground. Jiang landed atop the boss's lifeless form, clutching both daggers as his body continued to exude Little Nine's venomous mist. Gazing intently at the lifeless body, Jiang resolved that the moment had arrived to propagate the swarm of insects. Jiang walked up to the boss's body and stared at it. He couldn't believe he had finally won. Just then, a system window popped up to congratulate him for leveling up. Now he was at level 14 with a power rating of 127 stars. His passive abilities and level up effects were still active. Jiang clenched his fist, which started to glow. Looking down at it with a smile, he thought about how his strength kept growing as his level increased. With 127 stars, his combat power was almost equal to that of a level 25 professional in the combat class. He started to turn his head back, thinking that now he just needed to devour the monster corpses to gain devouring points. Seeing how powerful Jiang was, and sensing the power of the mother insect, the small spiders began to flee. These intelligent monsters knew they had no chance of defeating Jang. He turned his head and saw the little spiders fleeing, realizing there was no longer any threat. It quickly became clear that the spiders understood the situation and were escaping. Although he wanted to kill them for points, he decided against it, as the most important task now was to start breeding insects. He began walking towards the monster corpses, and gradually, Little Nine started to appear through the poisonous mist. With a deadly look, Jiang stared at the boss's corpse, clenched his fist tightly, raised his other hand towards the sky, and told Little Nine that it was now hers. When she heard this, she thanked him and changed back to her natural form. She opened her mouth, jumped, and moved toward the boss's corpse. She started devouring it, and a system window appeared, giving him 600 devouring points. As Little Nine enjoyed her meal, Jiang turned to the side with a serious look, thinking that elite monsters like this boss were different because they provided a high devouring value. He quickly concluded that hunting and rapidly breeding the insect swarm was a good way to become stronger and hunt more elite monsters. Moments later, another system window appeared, showing that his devouring value was full. The system asked if he wanted to start the insect breeding. Jiang looked at the system window and was amazed to see how quickly the devouring value had filled up. He soon realized that elite monsters gave many more points than normal ones. After a few seconds, Little Nine returned to her human form. She knelt before him, placing one hand on her knee and the other on the ground. Then she bowed her head before him and told him that Little Nine was already prepared to reproduce. She asked him for permission to continue accompanying him with much stronger power. While Jiang's body emitted a powerful aura, he turned his head to the side and remained silent for several seconds, lost in thought. He turned his head towards her, smiling as he decided it was time to begin breeding the insects. Just then, a system window appeared, informing him that Little Nine had already initiated the first generation of mass insect breeding. Jiang's and Little Nine's bodies began to emit a wave of energy. The system notified him that the accelerated growth of talents and the blessing of the growth of all things were in effect. With a serious expression, Jiang began to look at Little Nine, thinking to himself that his passive skills were more effective for speeding up insect breeding. After a few seconds, the mark of Little Nine appeared on his hand. Seeing this, he quickly realized it was a new ability. His assumption was correct as a system window appeared, granting him 2 new exclusive abilities called Insect Nest and Dominion. Then, another system window appeared, informing him that the insect breeding had been accelerated, with 8 seconds remaining. Seeing this, Jiang realized that the insect breeding was almost complete. He lifted his head towards the sky, and what he saw in front of him shocked him. He couldn't help but be amazed and wonder if this was a colony of insects. In front of him stood Little Nine, with both hands extended to the sides, reproducing itself. In an instant, thousands of insects appeared and began flying around them. The system congratulated Jiang for successfully completing the breeding of the first swarm of insects. According to the system, there were a total of 2,300 insects. Jiang turned his head to one side, observing the insects with a smile as he thought that the quantity was truly impressive. He couldn't believe that the first breeding cycle of the insects had produced over 2,000 offspring, and this was only the first generation. He wondered what would happen in the 3rd or 4th generation. One of the insects approached Jiang. Sensing its presence, he turned towards it and began to caress its head. He had a fondness for these insects. However, their abilities differed from Little Nine's. He observed that the insects had also gained some new skills. The insect status window appeared, named Son of 9 Wings of Miasma, boasting 4 abilities. The first was Poisonous Mist, enabling it to corrode and devour everything it touched. The second ability was Camouflage, enabling it to blend in by reflecting its wings. The third ability, Frenzy, continuously consumed the devouring value, temporarily boosting strength and speed. The fourth and final ability was called Self-Destruction. This ability enabled it to detonate its body, releasing toxins and causing massive damage in the process. Jiang found the Camouflage and Self-Destruction skills quite useful. While lost in thought, Little Nine approached him from behind and hugged him. Closing her eyes, she smiled, capturing his attention. Hearing her voice, Jiang snapped out of his trance, turning his head slightly towards her with a smile, feeling at ease. He shifted his body towards her, gently stroking her head, and thought with a smile that she seemed to have changed, but not much. Little Nine closed her eyes, placing her hands on her chest, and with a joyful smile, informed him that she had finished the process of breeding the insects. Then, she took Jiang's arm with both hands and expressed her desire to rest. Hearing this, he asked her what she meant by resting. At that moment, her body began to disappear. Jiang turned his head slightly towards his hand, feeling somewhat confused as he wondered where she had gone. At that moment, a system window appeared, informing him that Little Nine had returned to the insect nest. Jiang looked at his hand, couldn't help but smile, and felt relieved. The system space was incredible. It could accommodate swarms of insects. Now, the number of swarms didn't matter. They could all hide within the system, so Jiang would no longer fear being discovered by anyone. The insect nest was a new ability he had acquired, granted at maximum level, meaning it couldn't be leveled up. Jiang activated Little Nine's mark, looked at his hand, and saw that she was peacefully sleeping. He understood that after reproducing, insects needed to sleep. Jiang recalled his newly acquired ability called Dominion, and decided to test it to see how it worked. He extended his hand to the side and activated the skill. Instantly, his body emitted a powerful and suffocating energy, and his eyes began to shine. When Jiang activated the ability, the insects by his side turned their heads towards him, fixing him with a murderous gaze. Jiang reciprocated with a murderous look, understanding how the ability worked. He extended his hand towards the sky, and it began to absorb the insects. This new ability enabled Jiang to control the swarm of insects. He turned his head towards his hand and realized that using this skill was as easy as moving an arc. With his eyes shining, Jiang looked ahead in amazement. Through this ability, he could also tap into the senses of the insects. Now Jiang could perceive the world as insects did. Looking around, he saw the place teeming with monsters, hidden and ready to stalk their prey. Jiang turned his head to the side and, observing the behavior of the insects, couldn't help but smile. He realized they were also excited. With a determined gaze, Jiang and the insects fixed their eyes on the monsters. Surrounded by Little Nine's poisonous mist, Jiang ordered them to attack, testing their new abilities. Hearing his command, thousands of insects demolished a nearby building into pieces, grabbing the attention of all the monsters in the area. Their plan worked, drawing the attention of all the monsters nearby. They turned their heads towards the source and slowly started approaching to investigate. Jiang decided not to wait any longer and went after the monsters. Surrounded by Little Nine's poisonous mist, he advanced towards the monsters, who soon realized what was about to happen. They attempted to flee, but it was already too late. Just as they prepared to escape, the poisonous mist swiftly closed in on them. Within seconds, the mist enveloped the monsters, gradually corroding their bodies and inflicting immense pain. Before long, all the affected monsters succumbed to the poison and collapsed to the ground. With the monsters now deceased, the poisonous mist began to consume their bodies slowly. Jiang approached the corpses and scrutinized them closely. With the swarm of insects, he hardly needed to take action himself. The reach of the poisonous mist had expanded significantly, devouring its targets more swiftly and extensively. Moreover, he now possessed shared vision through the ability called Dominion. Common monsters could no longer conceal themselves from the swarm of insects. Jiang turned his head to the side, observing Little Nine's poisonous mist slowly consuming the monster corpses. A smile formed on his face as he realized that soon he would be able to breed more insects. He recalled that he hadn't checked how much devouring value was required for the next insect breeding. With this in mind, he opened the system window. Upon seeing what had appeared on the system interface, Jiang was shocked and began to ponder what was happening and what it meant. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like the video. At the same time, a man arrived at an abandoned warehouse near where Jiang was. He informed his leader that he had returned. Seeing him back, the leader asked why he had taken so long and ordered him to quickly report on what was happening in the spider's nest. The man, hooded and with green hair, was visibly scared. He informed his leader that the spider's nest had been annihilated by someone mysterious and unknown. The destruction was so complete that not a single monster was left alive. His superior, a tall man with braids, couldn't believe what he was hearing. He stared in disbelief, trying to comprehend the magnitude of the situation. He turned his head towards his subordinate and with a surprised look asked if this was some kind of joke. He couldn't believe that someone had completely annihilated the spider's nest. Another man standing nearby approached them, and upon hearing this was shocked. The man with green hair stepped closer, and with a serious expression confirmed that it was true, adding that the city of monsters was in ruins. Upon hearing this, their leader put his hand on his chin and stared at the ground, unable to believe the nest had been reduced to ashes. It was too terrifying to comprehend. Initially, he wondered if the Night Watch could be responsible, but he quickly dismissed the idea, knowing it wasn't their style. He concluded that the responsible party must be a covert operation, orchestrated by a clandestine family or a formidable assault group. Deciding that retreat was the wisest course of action, he couldn't help but feel disappointed. They had been tasked with the important mission of collecting venom from a wolf spider. With their mission failed, he resolved to recoup their losses on the journey back by preying on unsuspecting victims. The man beside him, upon hearing this plan, turned towards him, his brow furrowing with sweat and panic. As they conversed, the door of the abandoned warehouse creaked open. Startled by the sound, the trio swiftly turned their heads, and the man with green hair disclosed to the others that they had an unexpected visitor. Upon hearing this, curiosity swirled in their minds, pondering the identity of this newcomer. A man approached the door, placing his hand on it, and as it creaked open, he revealed that he had stumbled upon fellow professionals. Intrigued, the leader inquired about his identity. The newcomer introduced himself as Jang, stepping into the warehouse. With measured steps, he approached them, extending his hand in a gesture of peace, assuring them not to fret, as his sole purpose in coming was to enhance their capabilities. He also mentioned that he had brought some food to trade. Upon hearing this, their leader felt a wave of relief knowing that Jiang had arrived unaccompanied. Turning towards him, he locked eyes with Jiang, and with a smile, agreed to the exchange, noting that sustenance in the desert came at a cost. After his remark, he inquired about what Jiang wished to trade. The demeanor of the man beside him shifted dramatically. He assumed an aggressive posture, fixing a stern gaze on Jiang. Jiang, undeterred, approached the leader and met his gaze, reassuring him with a smile not to be concerned, mentioning he had valuable items for trade. At this, the man's expression underwent another drastic change. He cast his gaze upon Jiang, a smile tugging at his lips as curiosity piqued within him regarding what Jiang intended to exchange. The leader commanded Jiang to reveal his offerings. In that instant, the two men closed in around Jiang, drawing their swords with smiles on their faces. Jiang simply turned his head slightly towards them, unable to suppress his own smile. From the onset, he harbored doubts about their trustworthiness. Without hesitation, he activated the ring, extending his hand toward them. In an instant, numerous spiders emerged from the ring, their piercing gaze fixed upon the men. Jiang turned away from them, his voice tinged with mockery as he inquired about the quality of his merchandise. Upon encountering the spiders, the men hastily returned their swords to their scabbards, taking several steps back while remaining on high alert. Their gazes fixated on the spiders, beads of sweat forming on their brows as fear gripped them. They recognized the creatures as wolf spiders, prompting them to question whether these arachnids had somehow survived the destruction of the spider's nest. Contemplating this, they speculated whether Jiang had been the one to exterminate the spiders. Jiang Chen's current level stood at 17. He subtly shifted his gaze towards them, fixing them with an intense stare. With a smile, he assured them he was well aware of their suspicions. Following his statement, Jiang settled onto a nearby rock, tilting his head slightly towards them as he calmly disclosed his growing anger, advising them to arm themselves and depart immediately. he made his displeasure known. Upon hearing his words, the three men hastily gathered their belongings, turned away from Jang and fled, expressing apologies for the disturbance and affirming their immediate departure. After several minutes had passed and the men had fled the warehouse, Jang stretched out his hand to the side, unleashing Little Nine's poisonous mist. Commanding the insects to emerge, Jang remained seated on the rock, one arm casually resting on his knee. With a swift motion, he directed the poisonous mist to release 2 insects. The insects took flight around Jang, their eyes gleaming with a deadly intent as they scanned for potential threats. Meanwhile, Jiang took a sip of the soup left behind by the men, feeling the pangs of hunger intensify. Reflecting on his decision to acquire Little Nine, he realized he hadn't anticipated the side effects of leading the swarm of insects. As Jiang sipped the soup, a system window materialized, and his devouring value surged. Now standing at 2,768 points out of 1 million, the system urged him to boost this value promptly. Initially, he had anticipated a faster increase in the devouring value once the insect swarm doubled. However, he hadn't foreseen that the devouring value of the subsequent reproduction would also double. This development posed a significant challenge for Jiang, as the devouring value a boss could offer now seemed negligible. Even clearing out all the beast nests outside the city wouldn't suffice to replenish the devouring value for the next reproduction. Jiang cast his gaze downwards, lost in contemplation. He had been informed that the beast nests and secret realms under Nightwatch's control would remain undisclosed. This implied that to augment his swarm's devouring value, he needed to align himself with the Nightwatch promptly. He glanced at his hand, noticing that Little Nine had yet to awaken. Observing this, he swiftly realized the weighty responsibility of reproduction. Suddenly, he sensed another's presence. His demeanor shifted abruptly as he turned his head sharply, questioning the intruder's purpose. Rising to his feet, he clenched his fist tightly, angled his head slightly, and assumed a defensive stance. The scent of conflict filled the air, accompanied by the sound of many people in pursuit. Perplexed by the situation and the reasons behind the girl's chase, Jiang remained unsure of what transpired. Moments later, a girl concealed by an invisibility spell stumbled into the warehouse, colliding with Jiang before tumbling to the ground. It was the same girl from earlier. Using one hand to brace herself against the floor, she gingerly touched her head, wincing in pain. Jiang glanced at her, his expression a mixture of confusion and curiosity, pondering the unexpected reunion. Meanwhile, as the girl lay on the ground, she placed one hand on the floor for support, the other resting on her chest. Lifting her head to meet Jiang's gaze, she immediately recognized him as the boy she had encountered at the spider's nest. She gazed at him with fear in her eyes, pleading for secrecy about her presence. Jiang, taken aback by her request, turned to her with a surprised expression. She had been near him, yet he hadn't detected her presence at all. It didn't take him long to deduce that the person being pursued by the man with the blue hair was her. Determined to escort the girl to safety, he sensed another presence nearby. Swiftly, he turned his head towards the warehouse entrance, his expression turning serious as he realized it might already be too late to depart. Moments later, a group of individuals entered the warehouse, including Zheng Tai and the man with blue hair from the Shiao family. They advanced towards Jiang, and it didn't take long for Zheng Tai to recognize him. A sense of fear and apprehension washed over him. Pointing a trembling finger at Jiang, he informed his leader that Jiang was the same individual they had encountered previously. The man with blue hair casually slipped his hand into his pants pocket, fixing his gaze on Jiang. With a smile, he commended his subordinate for their keen sense of smell. Meanwhile, Jiang resumed his seat on the rock, his hands resting on his knees as he maintained a silent demeanor. Upon closer inspection, the man realized that the area was devoid of others, and Jiang was indeed camping alone. With a glare seething with anger, Zheng Tai fixed his eyes on Jiang, demanding to know if a girl had recently entered the warehouse. He insisted on an immediate response, threatening dire consequences if Jiang hesitated. Observing the tension, the man with blue hair interjected, placing his hand before Zheng Tai, and with a smile, requested him to hold off for a moment. Approaching Jiang, he settled onto the rock opposite him. Aware that Jiang belonged to the spiritual masterclass, he observed how swiftly Jiang had advanced in levels. Less than a day had passed since their last encounter, yet Jiang had already reached level 16. The man's curiosity about Jiang grew with each passing moment. Deciding to table the discussion for now, he announced that he had urgent matters to attend to. As Jiang maintained his silence while seated on the rock, the man rested an arm on his knee, drew his sword, and pointed it at Jiang's neck with a stern expression. Inquiring if Jiang had seen a girl with black hair nearby, he awaited a response. As his subordinates approached and stood behind him in silence, Jiang maintained his composure. Meeting the man's gaze, Jiang swiftly assessed the aura surrounding him, deducing that his level exceeded 30. Realizing the man's ability to accurately discern his class and level, Jiang speculated that he likely possessed specialized detection equipment. Jiang gestured towards the back door of the warehouse, explaining to the man that he had observed a shadow moving in that direction. However, due to not possessing the perceptive class, he couldn't confirm if it was the person they sought. Upon hearing Jiang's explanation, the man rose to his feet, cautiously choosing to trust him. He also cautioned Jiang to be more forthcoming in the future. Jiang, somewhat surprised by the advice, stood up as well. Facing away from Jiang, he angled his head slightly to look back at him, locking eyes with a menacing glare. He warned Jiang that if he discovered any assistance given to the girl, the Shiao family would not overlook it. Upon hearing this, Zheng Tai turned his head slightly towards Jiang, unable to suppress a smile. Several seconds later, the man and his subordinates started to depart from the warehouse. Jiang shifted his body to face them, observing their gradual departure. As they faded from view, he recalled that the Shiao family held the most power in Zhenguo. Fixing his gaze on the man with blue hair, he pondered the extensive history of the clans in the city, all of which held positions as feudal officials. These clans were shrouded in mystery and seldom intervened in worldly affairs unless faced with significant calamity. Some of their most formidable members were said to possess abilities capable of altering the very fabric of the heavens and the earth. This man possessed greater power than Jiang had anticipated, a realization that unsettled him. Being remembered by someone of such influence wasn't advantageous. After a few moments, Jiang glanced towards the warehouse exit and noticed that the men had departed. Recognizing that lingering in this place was unwise, he made the decision to leave as well. Emerging from her hiding spot, the girl approached Jiang, placing her hands on her hips as she expressed gratitude for his rescue. Jiang rose to his feet, facing her without uttering a word. Suddenly seizing her arm, Jiang's action startled the girl, who grew anxious about his intentions. Jiang stepped closer, fixing her with an intense gaze, and accused her of nearly deceiving him again, just as she had done before. Having assisted her once more, Jiang inquired about her predicament with those individuals. With Jiang in such proximity, she couldn't help but blush, meeting his gaze as she revealed her family's significant debt. She went on to explain that the man intended to seize the goods they were transporting and eliminate them all, but he hadn't anticipated her escape. Fearing the possibility of the news leaking out, he had pursued her for this very reason. After elucidating her situation, she questioned Jiang about his intentions to silence her. Upon hearing her words, Jiang released her hand, turned away, and started to walk in the opposite direction. Observing his departure, she placed a hand over her chest, feeling a mix of emotions. Extending her hand towards him, she expressed her eternal gratitude for his assistance and pledged to repay his kindness in the future. As he withdrew from her, he closed his eyes, fists clenched tightly, and firmly stated his reluctance to become entangled in her affairs. Suddenly halting, Jiang's eyes snapped open as a sense of unease washed over him. The girl too sensed the shift, and her expression turned fearful. With trepidation, she informed him that a barrier spell had been cast around the warehouse. Just then, a voice from outside the warehouse commanded their subordinates to emerge. Jiang turned his gaze towards the warehouse entrance, realizing that escape was now improbable. Aware that even if the girl denied knowing him, they would no longer believe her, he activated his insect perception ability. As he moved around the area, he quickly discerned that they were completely surrounded. With a determined expression, Jang fixed his gaze on the warehouse entrance, prepared to confront any adversary. On the opposite side, the girl grew fearful, clutching her chest with trembling hands. Moments later, the man with blue hair and his subordinates emerged, their presence exuding a palpable aura of danger. Fixing a piercing gaze on Jiang, they prepared to deal the final blow. Sensing Jiang's deception, one of them advanced, locking eyes with him, and demanded that he surrender the girl. He called Jiang a liar and ordered his men to catch the girl. Jiang stared at him silently, looking serious. When the girl saw the man with blue hair, her expression changed. She looked at him, panicking and terrified. She told Jiang that he had already taken everything from the Luo family. Then she asked the man why he wanted to kill her so badly. The man looked at her and calmly asked if he really needed a reason. When Jiang heard she was from the Luo family, he turned to her, staring intently and seriously. Jiang and the girl were on the second floor of the abandoned warehouse, while the man with blue hair and his subordinates were on the first floor. She clenched one fist, extended her other hand to the side, and stared at the man, warning him that if he killed her, the Luo family would never forgive him. She added that the Luo family would never let him live in peace. Jiang, standing behind her with his arms dropped to his sides, kept watching the man. Hearing this, the man with blue hair burst into laughter and asked if she truly believed that a family like the Luo family could do such a thing. At that moment, his subordinates began to smile at the girl. With one hand on his waist and the other covering his face, the man couldn't help but laugh. He found it amusing that a second-rate family with a bit of money took themselves so seriously. He revealed to the girl that without the protection of the Shiao family ancestors 100 years ago, the Luo family would have been annihilated long ago. Upon hearing this, one of his subordinates unsheathed his sword while the others started laughing. Zheng Tai crossed his arms, stared intently at Jiang, and couldn't help but smile. With a serious look, he lifted his head, removed his hand from his face, and told her that in the eyes of the Xiao family, they were no different from humble peasants. He added that to them, they were merely cattle for the Xiao family to slaughter. Hearing this, Jiang turned his head toward him, his eyes filled with hatred as he stared intently. He couldn't believe such arrogance. The man extended his hand forward, and his palm started emitting a powerful red energy that began to rise towards the sky. He then looked at the girl with a smile and asked what the Xiao family could investigate if there was nothing left to find. Moments later, the energy he had released formed a powerful barrier around the abandoned warehouse. This ability was known as the Dragon Prison Formation of the Xiao family. The girl looked up at the sky, placed a hand on her chest, and clenched her fist, feeling both astonished and panicked, unsure of how she would escape. Jiang also lifted his head, and upon seeing the barrier, couldn't help but be amazed. To him, the man with blue hair was indeed very interesting. Jiang and the girl were on the second floor of the old warehouse. Zheng Tai took out his sword, looked at the girl, and got ready to attack. He told everyone to obey the young master's orders and not spare anyone. They all agreed. The man with blue hair next to Zheng Tai stayed quiet. A few seconds passed, and Zheng Tai was about to attack. Suddenly, the man with blue hair stepped forward and signaled him to halt by raising his hand. Then, he looked at Jiang and said with a smile that the girl from the Luo family had to die that day. He seemed intrigued by Jiang because he knew Jiang had powerful abilities. After speaking, he continued to gaze at Jiang and told Zheng Tai that being a spiritual master, a type of creation class, was incredibly rare. Unlike others who were unaware, he understood its significance. With a smile, he extended his hand and offered Jiang the chance to seize everything today. He stretched out his hand to Jiang and instructed him to seize the girl, offering to spare his life in return for serving the Xiao family. Then, he turned to Jiang and inquired about his opinion. The girl, with her hands on her waist, couldn't help but be shocked upon hearing this. Meanwhile, Jiang lowered his arms and stayed silent for a few moments. Jiang looked down at the ground and couldn't resist smiling and complimenting him, acknowledging the Xiao family's knack for persuasive talk. The girl glanced at him, feeling a surge of panic, unsure if Jiang would indeed accept the offer. Jiang glared at the man with blue hair with a fierce expression, refusing his offer and mocking him by saying the Shiao family could go to hell. He clenched his fists tightly, his body emitting the poisonous mist of Little Nine. With a serious tone, he firmly stated his refusal. He challenged the man to come for him if he wanted a fight. The girl turned toward Jiang, clasping her hands to her chest. Seeing him enveloped in poisonous mist, she took a few steps back, feeling terrified and confused about what was happening. Upon learning of Jiang's rejection, the man with blue hair became enraged, feeling dishonored. He commanded his subordinates to attack and finish Jiang. Upon receiving the order, they drew their swords, built up momentum, leaped forward, and swiftly advanced towards Jiang. As they leaped through the air, Zheng Tai glanced at Jiang and cautioned the others to be wary, acknowledging that Jiang was formidable. Drawing nearer, Jiang remained still, silently watching them without any action. Moments later, as they neared the second floor, Zheng Tai noticed the poisonous mist surrounding Jiang's body. He warned the others that Jiang could wield poison and advised against a direct attack. Seeing the imminent attack, the girl sought shelter behind Jiang. Suddenly, Jiang deactivated the poisonous mist, reaching out his hand towards them. Surrounded by a green energy, he fixed a serious gaze on Zheng Tai and disclosed that he not only wielded poison, but also possessed a talent ability. Witnessing this, the girl stepped back, her hand instinctively reaching for her chest. She turned to Jiang, feeling a mix of confusion and curiosity about his newfound power. Suddenly, green spiritual roots sprouted from the ground. Zheng Tai moved closer to Jiang, gripping his sword tightly with both hands, readying himself to attack. In that instant, he glanced downward and was astonished by the sight of the spiritual roots. He couldn't help but ponder what this newfound ability was. The roots swiftly expanded, wrapping around Zheng Tai and the others, immobilizing them completely. Panic set in as they grappled with the unfamiliar situation. Jiang, with his hand outstretched, explained that his ability was the evolution of all things. Gradually, the spiritual roots tightened around Zheng Tai's body. He instinctively grasped at the roots, his gaze fixed on Jiang, bewildered by the unfolding events. Observing the immense strength of the roots, he realized that Jiang's class was of divine rank. Confusion clouded his mind as he recalled Jiang's ability to wield poison. Refusing to remain passive, he drew his sword, gripping it tightly with both hands, and exerted all his strength to slice through the roots ensnaring him. Witnessing his actions, the others followed suit, joining in the effort to free themselves. He urged them to attack the roots, noting their fragility. As the spiritual roots fell around the man with blue hair, he swiftly pushed them away with his hands, quickly grasping the situation. With a startled expression, he shouted, berating Zheng Tai for falling for the distraction. He emphasized that Jiang was now prepared to launch an attack. With Zheng Tai and the others distracted, Jiang seized the opportunity to release the insects, their gaze piercing. Enveloped in poisonous mist, he extended his hand to the side, locking eyes with them, and declared that it was already too late. Meanwhile, the girl sat on the floor, her hand resting upon it. Raising her head, she was taken aback by the sight of the insects. While Zheng Tai's subordinates were preoccupied with cutting the roots, the insects advanced toward them. Turning his head, he caught sight of the insects, his expression shifting dramatically. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he was overcome with shock, pondering the identity of these creatures. The insects swiftly moved and launched their attack. Zheng Tai tried to defend himself with his sword, but to his dismay, the insects overwhelmed him with their strength, shattering his weapon within seconds. Shocked and disbelieving, he stared in horror, as Jiang had effectively destroyed his only means of defense. Upon closer examination, he discerned that the mist wasn't poison, but rather summoned monsters. Suddenly, an insect lurched towards him from behind, poised to strike. Startled, he lifted his head, shocked by the revelation. With growing alarm, he shouted to the others, disclosing that the apparent poisonous mist emanated from these creatures. Realizing he couldn't evade the attack, Zheng Tai faced his fate. Jiang, controlling the insect with an outstretched hand, fixed him with a murderous gaze and smiled, satisfied he had finally trapped him. Just as the insect was about to strike Zheng Tai, someone intervened, placing a foot on his shoulder, calling him trash, and ordering him to get lost. Turning his head to the side, he felt a wave of confusion. Jiang, too, was both puzzled and amazed by the sight. The person intervening was none other than the man with blue hair. Drawing his sword and gripping it with one hand, he gathered momentum, leaped forward, and slowly advanced towards Jiang, executing the first form of Kongning's 9 forms. As he did this, an orange aura emanated from his body. Jiang, still enveloped by Little Nine's poisonous mist, remained silent. The girl sitting next to him covered her mouth in terror. Jiang looked up at the advancing figure and, realizing he was faster than the mist, clenched his teeth and began to sweat. He employed the Shiao family's secret technique, known as chasing dragons. Instantly, a dragon made of spiritual energy appeared, fixating on Jiang. With a fierce expression, it lunged at him. The dragon's attack was so powerful that it shattered the area around Jiang into pieces, creating a thick smoke screen in the process. Holding his sword with one hand and extending it toward Jiang, he stared intently and smiled, calling him a bastard. He knew Jiang would be a challenge, but he took comfort in knowing Jiang's level wasn't very high and his speed wasn't impressive. He believed that with this blade alone, he could defeat him. To his astonishment, once the smoke cleared several seconds later, his expression changed drastically. He was in shock, unable to believe what he was seeing. Jiang was still alive, protected by a shield created by the girl using her hidden profession ability, Earth Eternal Shield. With her hands extended towards the shield, it began to crack. Closing her eyes and with blood trickling from her mouth, she told Jiang that she was in great pain. Jiang, standing behind her, looked at her with a surprised and dumbfounded expression, realizing that she was actually a defensive type. The man with blue hair had overlooked her, but seeing her block his attack with the shield, he became enraged. He glared at her aggressively, clenched his teeth, and readied himself to attack again. Jiang saw this as a perfect opportunity to strike. He extended his hand to one side, releasing the poisonous mist. Moments later, he landed on the ground. Suddenly, several insects rapidly approached him from behind. One of his subordinates, lying on the ground, reached out and called out to him, urging him to be careful. Holding his sword in one hand, he turned his head and saw the insects rapidly approaching, prompting him to become alert. In a swift move, he grabbed one of his subordinates by the hood. The subordinate, confused and unaware of what was happening, found himself being used as a shield. With one hand gripping his sword and the other holding his subordinate by the hood, he positioned the subordinate in front of him. As the insects lacked intelligence, they targeted his subordinate instead of him. The force of the insect's attack sent their bodies flying backward, leaving his subordinate seriously injured. With his subordinate lying beside him, he knelt down, leaned his sword against the ground, rested his arm on his knee, and looked down at the ground, coughing. Jiang descended from the second floor, advancing toward him with disdain, thinking he was despicable for using his own man as a shield. The insect's attack pierced the man's chest as he lay on the ground. Despite being badly injured and bleeding from his mouth, he miraculously remained alive. Coughing, he drew his master's attention. Standing up, he approached Jiang and, glancing at his subordinate, expressed gratitude for enduring the attack on his behalf. Jiang, standing before him, stayed silent. The man retrieved a dragon pill from his pocket, placed it in his mouth, and consumed it, unwillingly resorting to its power. He approached Jiang, dragging his sword along the ground, causing small rocks to lift and hover slowly. Observing the situation, Jiang shifted into an offensive stance. Meanwhile, the girl beside him, clutching her wounded arm, stayed motionless. Gripping his sword tightly and aiming it at Jiang, the man's eyes gleamed with malice as he threatened to decapitate Jiang with his next strike. Jiang, however, remained composed, meeting the man's gaze with calm resolve, prepared to confront any attack. As the Dragon Yuan pill's power surged through him, an immense elemental energy dragon materialized behind him, its colossal form shimmering with an intense glow. The dragon's eyes sparkled with readiness, signaling that it was primed for battle. He planted his feet firmly, the ground beneath him fracturing into shards with the force of his stance. With a fierce grip, He brandished his sword and locked eyes with Jiang, his gaze burning with a relentless resolve to end the fight once and for all. His energy radiated with such intensity that the rocks around him began to levitate. Jiang's gaze fixated on the formidable dragon, a wave of terror washing over him as he doubted his ability to endure the impending assault. The blue-haired warrior slowly unsheathed his sword, the blade glinting ominously. With a steely determination, he resolved to execute the second technique of the dragon slash, preparing for a decisive strike. In that instant, he unleashed the formidable descending dragon's cut, directing a devastating strike towards Jang. As he did, an overwhelming surge of energy emanated from his body, and in a flash, the elemental energy dragon surged forward with incredible speed, its jaws parted wide, poised to deliver the final blow. At that critical moment, the girl stepped in front of Jang, her resolve unwavering. With her hands outstretched towards the oncoming assault, she summoned the Earth Eternal Shield once more. Jiang shielded his face with his elbow and glanced her way. Seeing her, battered yet steadfast, ready to intercept yet another attack, he couldn't hide his surprise at her tenacity. In a flash, a shimmering green shield enveloped them. The spiritual dragon, undeterred, launched a fierce assault on the barrier, causing the ground to fracture and a thick veil of smoke to rise. With her hands outstretched, she focused all her energy on maintaining the shield against the relentless attack. Eyes closed and teeth clenched, she explained to Jiang, her voice strained yet clear, that the man's power had surged dramatically. He had consumed the Shiao family's secret dragon Yun pill, amplifying the dragon's strength many times over. Her shield, unable to fully repel the assault, began to fracture, signaling their impending doom. As the cracks widened, she mustered every ounce of her remaining strength to sustain it for as long as possible. Meanwhile, Jiang clutched his cloak, his gaze fixated on the spiritual dragon. He couldn't help but marvel at its power, realizing the true extent of the blue-haired warrior's strength. Each blow from the dragon was lethal, showcasing the terrifying might behind every strike. The earlier assault had already been awe-inspiring, leaving Jiang unprepared for the sheer force of this new attack. The blue-haired warrior leaped forward, closing the distance between them, his gaze locking onto Jiang with a fierce intensity. Noticing the shield beginning to fracture, a smug smile curled on his lips. He unleashed the descending dragon's cut repeatedly, each powerful slash aimed directly at the weakening barrier, determined to shatter it completely. Jiang's eyes met those of the blue-haired warrior, and with steely resolve, he raised his hand toward the sky, activating the swarm of insects mark. Recognizing the merciless strength of his opponent, Jiang resolved to hold nothing back. As the girl's shield finally shattered, a horde of thousands of insects surged from Jiang's hand, swarming into the sky with a buzzing fury. The blue-haired warrior's eyes widened in shock as he gazed upward at the teeming mass of insects filling the sky. Clenching his teeth, confusion and alarm flickered across his face as he struggled to comprehend what was unfolding. Amidst the swarming horde pouring from Jiang's hand, Jiang fixed his stare on the blue-haired man, and with a steady voice, warned him to prepare for what was coming next. Sitting on the ground behind him, the girl pressed a hand to the wound on her shoulder, her eyes widening in surprise as she watched Jiang. She couldn't help but wonder if he truly possessed the extraordinary powers of the creation class. As swarms of insects gathered around Jiang, they directed their collective gaze towards the blue-haired warrior, poised and ready to strike. As Jiang advanced towards him, he issued the command for the insects to attack. At the sound of this command, the blue-haired warrior clenched his teeth in panic, realizing the dire situation he was in. Knowing that facing such a multitude of insects at once left him with little chance of victory, fear gripped him. With Jiang's order echoing in the air, the insect surged forward, closing in on him and preparing to strike. Confronted by the overwhelming swarm of insects, he drew his sword and adopted a defensive posture. With a determined expression, he fixed his gaze on Jiang and executed the descending dragon cut. As his sword pulsed with potent energy, he refused to yield, dismissing the insects as mere nuisances unworthy of his surrender. Effortlessly, he began slicing through the insects, even as Little Nine emitted a poisonous mist from Jiang's body. Fixing him with a piercing gaze, he extended his hand and questioned the truth of his beliefs. To his astonishment, the injured insects started regenerating before his eyes, Surprised by this unexpected turn, he couldn't help but wonder how such regeneration was possible. Moments later, the insects pressed forward, renewing their assault. He fought back with his sword, cleaving through their bodies, only to watch them regenerate with alarming speed. Panic gripped him as he grappled with the realization that these creatures couldn't be killed by conventional means. As the insects continued to swarm from Jiang's body, he regarded the blue-haired warrior with a steely gaze, determined to test his endurance. Behind him, the girl turned her head, her expression a mix of astonishment and admiration, pondering the true extent of his strength. Enraged by Jiang's taunts, he swung his sword with fury, unleashing the descending dragon cut once more, cleaving an insect in half. As the spiritual dragon reappeared, it opened its maw and began devouring the insects. He had chosen this attack strategically, knowing that the dragon's relentless appetite would prevent the insects from regenerating. Caught off guard, he felt a sharp bite on his arm as an insect attacked from behind, injecting venom and forcing him to release his grip on his sword. With a grimace of pain, he turned to see the insect, gritting his teeth as he realized the gravity of the situation. This turn of events was far from ideal. With his right hand incapacitated by poison, wielding the sword was no longer an option. Forced to act quickly, he reached into his garments and retrieved a crimson object. As the insects closed in, he raised the object skyward and invoked the technique known as Jade Protection of Life. In that moment, a potent crimson aura enveloped his form, radiating with formidable energy. Mocking Jiang, he questioned whether Jiang truly believed he could defeat the mighty Shiao family with a mere swarm of insects. Jiang remained silent, observing him intently. The blue-haired man extended his hand towards him, his expression serious as he inquired about the nature of the treasure and its remarkable power. With his command issued, he directed the insects to consume him. However, the object summoned a protective shield around the blue-haired man's body. Despite Jiang's orders, the insects relentlessly attacked the shield to no avail. Witnessing their futile efforts, he swiftly recognized that not even a scratch had been made upon the shield by the assault. As the blue-haired man tended to the wound on his arm from the insect bite, he turned to Jiang and cautioned him against expending his efforts, explaining that the shield was powered by the inherited treasure of the Shiao family known as the Jade Treasure, imbued with divine capabilities. However, Jiang remained undeterred, insisting on another assault and commanding the insects to attack once more. The blue-haired man fixed his gaze on Jiang, elucidating that once the Jade Treasure was activated, the shield became impervious to all external assaults. With this protective barrier in place, Jiang's attempts to harm him would be futile. Jiang maintained his silence as the insects persisted in attacking the shield. Meanwhile, the blue-haired man advanced toward them. Witnessing Jiang's mastery over the insects and his ability to wield the ancestral treasure, the blue-haired man couldn't help but commend him for his remarkable prowess. Even if Jiang were to exhaust all his strategies, he wouldn't be able to inflict harm. Witnessing the man's advance, the girl rose to her feet and seized Jiang's garments. In moments, blood trickled from the man's mouth as he drew near Jiang. With a smile, he extended a final offer. If Jiang agreed to submit and follow him, he could grant Jiang the coveted status of sharing his surname, a privilege many aspired to attain. With his proposal laid out, he urged Jiang to ponder it meticulously, emphasizing not to overlook such a significant opportunity. Jiang regarded him with a composed expression, taking several moments of silence to contemplate. However, as he fixed his gaze upon the blue-haired man, a wave of anger washed over him. It infuriated Jiang to see the blue-haired man's arrogance had blinded him to the gravity of his circumstances. Upon hearing this, the girl turned her head towards him, a perplexed expression crossing her features as she pondered Jiang's intentions. He approached Jiang, extending his hand with a smirk, and requested him to cease his boasting. Whether Jiang accepted the offer or not held little significance to him, for even if he couldn't eliminate Jiang today, he remained confident that he could do so on any other given day. Under the extensive influence of the Shiao family across the nation, evading or confronting them would prove futile. Jiang fixed the blue-haired man with a steady gaze, a smile playing at his lips. He reminded the blue-haired man of his earlier assertion that one couldn't uncover anything if there were no traces to discover. After stating this, Jang posed a question. What would be the consequences if he were to perish without leaving behind any evidence? Suddenly, a colossal tentacle slammed into the ground, its impact echoing through the air. At the sound, the blue-haired man's head jerked back slightly, his expression morphing into one of dread as he pondered the source of the disturbance. This massive appendage belonged to the insect mother, who emerged from the swarm and loomed behind them. Witnessing her immense size, the girl collapsed to the ground in shock. The blue-haired man gazed upwards, his expression fraught with fear and beads of sweat forming on his brow as he beheld the immense and menacing figure before him. Meanwhile, Jang issued the command for the insect mother to consume him. Little Nine, upon hearing Jang's directive, began to move towards the blue-haired man, expressing gratitude to Jang as she hungered for the prey. At this revelation, the blue-haired man's countenance shifted dramatically, reflecting his growing apprehension. A fear unlike any he had ever experienced gripped him. Little Nine smiled menacingly as she used her formidable strength to lash out with her tentacle, striking the blue-haired man with tremendous force. His body was hurled through the air, crashing violently into the wall, which shattered upon impact. Screams of agony escaped him as he struggled to comprehend the existence of a monstrous being like Little Nine. The blue-haired man inquired of Jang about the nature of Little Nine, expressing disbelief at her monstrous form. With a composed demeanor, Jang elucidated that Little Nine had recently completed her reproduction cycle, making him and the jade precisely what she required to satiate her hunger. Meanwhile, Little Nine continued her relentless assault on the blue-haired man, repeatedly striking him with her tentacle, enveloping the area in a dense cloud of smoke. Within moments, the shield began to shatter into fragments, prompting him to cry out in agony, bewildered by the ease with which the barrier had crumbled. Blood seeped from his mouth as he collapsed to the ground, unable to comprehend the unfolding events. The realization dawned upon him that the fate of the Shiao family and the Jade were now hanging by a thread, on the verge of vanishing entirely. With the shield shattered, Little Nine fixed her gaze upon him, her intent clear as she drew her tentacle closer, preparing to administer the fatal strike. Jiang maintained a stoic demeanor, silently observing the unfolding scene. Little Nine launched her attack on the blue-haired man, pulverizing the ground into fragments in the process. After a brief interval, Little Nine completed her transformation, assuming her human guise once more and embracing Jiang. With closed eyes and a serene smile, she remarked that the blue-haired man had been quite satisfying. Expressing her gratitude, she went on to declare that she loved Jiang the most. Meanwhile, the girl sitting on the floor turned her head away, her expression a mix of confusion and fear upon witnessing Little Nine's transformation. As Jiang walked away, he glanced back at her, resolving to ensure her safety. Panic surged through the girl as she sat on the floor, her brow damp with sweat. The realization that she now harbored his secret weighed heavily on her mind, prompting fearful thoughts of whether he might eliminate her to maintain his silence. Jang fixed the girl with a penetrating gaze, contemplating his next move. As he stood there, the air around him began to shimmer with Little Nine's toxic mist, and a swarm of menacing insects gathered at his back, their attention locked on her, poised to strike. He stepped closer, his eyes dropping to the ground, and in a chilling voice, demanded she provide a compelling reason for him to spare her life. Seeing the menacing mist and insects, she was seized with panic. She dropped to her knees, her hands trembling as she produced a small pouch of gold coins. Bowing her head, she pleaded, "This is everything I have. It's worth millions, my entire life savings. Take it, just spare me." Jiang picked up a coin, its weight cold in his hand. He eyed her closely, noting the genuine fear and desperation in her voice. For a moment, he considered her offer, sensing a hint of sincerity in her plea. Despite her apparent sincerity, Jiang was wary. She knew too much and had a history of deceit. He concluded that she posed too great a risk to leave alive. As she sensed his resolve, she rose to her feet, eyes closed in a desperate act of faith. With one hand raised skyward, she solemnly swore by the name Luo Sandow that if she had lied, she would accept the heaven's wrath in the form of 5 thunderbolts. Jiang hesitated, puzzled by her declaration. He couldn't be sure if Luo Sandow was indeed her true name or another fabrication, given her propensity for lying without regard for the truth. Luo Sandow stepped forward, offering her identification card with a steady hand. Her eyes held a sincere, unwavering gaze as she spoke. "What I'm telling you is the truth. I can't explain why my parents chose this name for me, but I swear, I'm not deceiving you." She paused, then added, "If you still have doubts, my ID card will confirm it." Jang accepted her identification card, bringing it closer for inspection. The photo depicted a round-faced girl, markedly different from the woman before him. Puzzled, he questioned Luo Sandow. "Are you sure this is you?" In response, she grasped a few strands of her hair, mimicking the appearance of twin ponytails. Closing her eyes and puffing out her cheeks, she explained with a hint of embarrassment, "This was taken 2 years ago. I hadn't grown up yet and hadn't lost the weight." Seeing the comical earnestness in her expression, Jiang couldn't help but turn away, bursting into laughter. His outburst left the insects hovering behind him visibly puzzled. Regaining his composure, he fixed her with a piercing stare and said, "I still can't trust you. This secret you're trying to protect, it's a burden only the dead can carry." Before Jiang could finish his sentence, she sprang into action. Activating her storage ring, she conjured a shimmering portal. With one hand reaching into its depths, she retrieved a scroll and advanced toward him. Her expression turned serious as she said, "Don't worry about this." Jiang, taken aback, stared at the scroll in astonishment and asked, "What is that?" With both hands, she unfurled the scroll, her movements deliberate and steady. "This is a sealing scroll," she explained to Jiang, her voice edged with a mix of fear and resolve. "Once I reveal your secret, it will execute me instantly. I'm terrified of dying, which is why I brought this out." As she spoke, a system window materialized in front of Jang, indicating that she had sworn to safeguard his secret at the cost of her own life. If she revealed this secret, she would be executed, she reiterated, her voice trembling. Jang was taken aback, struggling to comprehend that such a thing existed in the world. After a few moments of stunned silence, he cautiously took the scroll from her hands. Squinting with one eye as he examined it closely with the other, he finally nodded in acceptance. With the confidentiality scroll binding her to secrecy, Jiang decided to spare her life, at least for the time being. Grateful, she expressed her thanks. Curiosity piqued, he turned to her and inquired about the scroll's cost. She touched her finger to her cheek, thoughtfully considering his question, and then replied, "It's worth about 10 million. Jiang clenched the scroll tightly and advanced towards her, his expression darkening with the realization that she had just exhausted the only valuable item in her storage ring. Seeing her trembling hands, she panicked and suggested, "If you come with me to my home, my parents will treat you well and reward you generously." Jiang turned away from her, beginning to walk, and stated that he had to report to the night watch early the next morning, so he couldn't delay any longer. After bidding her good luck, he started to move away. As she watched him retreat, she called out to him, catching his attention. She requested that he accompany her home, since her house was much closer than the night watch headquarters. Near her house, there was a teleportation station, and she assured him that he would arrive on time if he accompanied her. Initially hesitant, Jiang eventually agreed, and several hours later, they arrived at the Grand Luo family mansion. The estate was stunningly vast and opulent, resembling a castle in its grandeur. Inside, a group of hooded figures knelt before a woman seated upon a throne, the center of attention in the mansion. A man approached her and delivered the news about her daughter. Shocked by the revelation, she struggled to comprehend how such a thing could have happened. The Shiao family's actions of theft, murder, and now deceit had pushed her tolerance to its limit. Seeing her fury, the man implored her to direct her anger away from him, acknowledging his role in causing her pain and suffering. A few minutes later, Luo Sandow entered the room and quietly moved to her mother's side. She sat down, laying her head on her mother's lap, tears streaming down her face. Her mother comforted her with a gentle touch before turning her furious gaze towards her subordinates. In that moment, she resolved decisively to take action against the Shiao family. Her husband approached her, his gaze steady and reassuring. He gently gestured with his hands, speaking in a serious tone, urging her to calm herself. He emphasized that the priority was Luo Sandow's safe return. He reminded her of the Shiao family's influence as a powerful entity in the country, cautioning that their family, as mere merchants, couldn't afford to provoke them. Jang observed silently, pondering that her true name must be Luo Sandow. Her father turned towards Jang, offering him a black card. With a grateful smile and closed eyes, he thanked Jang for rescuing their daughter, urging him to keep the black card. Beside him, the mother turned her head, eyes closed in a serene expression, and warmly acknowledged Jang as their benefactor. She had prepared a meal for him, intending for him to eat in peace before using their efficient teleportation system. Jiang accepted the black card gratefully, closing his eyes as he expressed his intention not to eat. However, just then, his stomach rumbled loudly. Blushing slightly, he chuckled, scratching the back of his head sheepishly, and reluctantly decided to partake in a small portion of the meal. Seeing Jiang's hunger, her father gestured to where the food was laid out, prompting immediate organization. Meanwhile, her mother placed a hand near her face, closed her eyes, and smiled contentedly. The finest chefs of the Luo family swiftly prepared a feast. Within minutes, Jiang savored several dishes, stacking them into a tower as he enjoyed the meal. As a waiter approached with another dish, he appeared puzzled and somewhat surprised. Jiang sat with one hand on the table, the other holding a piece of meat, contemplating how his growing appetite seemed to coincide with the increasing number of insects around him. Next to him sat Luo Sandow, who turned to Jiang with a smile, advising him to take his time and enjoy his meal. Beside her, her parents sat, closing their eyes and wearing joyful smiles as they silently observed Jiang. As Jiang continued to eat heartily, Luo Sandow couldn't help but blush and feel pleasantly surprised watching him. Sipping her tea, the mother conveyed to her father what their daughter had mentioned, that Jiang belonged to the creation class and possessed a divine rank. Perplexed, she couldn't fathom how he managed to rescue their daughter from the Shiao family. Her father, deep in thought, rested his hand under his chin as he contemplated Jiang. She explained to her husband that despite their daughter's reluctance to admit it, she was certain Jiang possessed hidden abilities and was more capable than he appeared. She also noted his handsome appearance. They exchanged a knowing glance and smiled, both silently considering that if Jiang could aid them in their struggle against the Shiao family and protect their daughter indefinitely, he would be an ideal ally. With a warm smile, her father asked Jiang if he had a girlfriend. Her mother also mentioned that in their family, Sandow was currently single. She hinted at Sandow's proficiency in a hidden profession. Aside from excelling in business, she was skilled in financial management. Her father stood nearby, giving Jiang a thumbs up as he complimented Sandow's attractive physique, noting her measurements of 24 to 36. He also suggested that they would make a perfect couple and even mentioned names he had thought of for their future children. Jiang, who was taking a sip of water, set the glass down abruptly, nearly spitting out the water in shock. Hearing her parents' suggestion, she blushed deeply, feeling bewildered by what was unfolding. Without hesitation, Jiang quickly excused himself, expressing gratitude for their hospitality. He mentioned feeling full and having urgent matters to attend to. Observing this, her father requested him to wait a bit longer, as they had something important to discuss with him. Sandow intervened, approaching her father and placing a hand over his mouth, urging him to remain silent. Her mother turned to Sandow with a disappointed expression and took a seat. Sandow's father approached and informed her that Jiang had departed, suggesting she bid him farewell as her husband. Sandow's mother reassured her, noting that her father knew the location of the black card, so there was no need to worry. She was startled by the revelation that they intended to follow him wherever he went. Gripping her knees tightly, she closed her eyes and let out a scream, pleading with them to stop talking. As she looked down, her mind raced with thoughts of Jiang. She couldn't deny his handsome and strong appearance, yet she found him equally intimidating. Despite his fearsome demeanor, she couldn't deny his undeniable charm and strength. Meanwhile, in the Xiao family, Xiao Yuanshan, the patriarch, received the devastating news of his grandson's death. Enraged, he ordered his subordinates to conduct a thorough investigation into the murder, determined to find the perpetrator. The identity of the culprit remained a mystery to him. He instructed his other grandson to promptly dispatch someone to investigate the matter. As a subordinate knelt before him, Xiao Beihan, with one hand casually in his pants pocket, approached his grandfather. Gesturing with his free hand, he voiced his disappointment, stating that his cousin, despite being over 20 years old, had only reached level 30 of the second transformation and thus deemed useless. After expressing his thoughts, Xiao Beihan questioned the significance of mourning the death of someone he deemed useless, suggesting to his grandfather that it wasn't worth becoming so enraged over. Xiao Yuanshan, seated with both hands on his knees, fixed his gaze on Xiao Beihan and remarked that his cousin was indeed mediocre, pale in comparison to him. Thus, he considered it no loss that his cousin was dead. Xiao Beihan further asserted that, after all, his cousin was still his grandfather's grandson. Even to strike a dog, one had to consider its owner. He expressed curiosity about who in the country would dare to kill a member of the Xiao family. Upon hearing this, Xiao Beihan smiled, extending his hand forward as a malevolent energy began to radiate from it. He reassured his grandfather not to concern himself with such trivial matters. Once the Tianjiao camp issue was resolved, regardless of guilt, he pledged to handle it on his behalf. Meanwhile, Jiang arrived at the Night Watch office. He opened the door and entered, where he found the Night Watch leader and several others gathered. Jiang turned to his side in mild surprise upon seeing Jiang's arrival. Walking over, he scratched the back of his head and introduced himself as Jiang Chen, the new member of the Night Watch. Jiang couldn't help but notice the crowd gathered and wondered about their presence. Jiang approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder, closing his eyes, and with a smile, informed him that they had been anticipating his arrival. Upon hearing this, Jiang was surprised. Jiang proceeded to introduce him to the key new members of their group. The first was Yun Xiaoke, a level 45 healer in the second stage. Formerly the youngest, Jiang had now usurped that position from her. Blushing slightly, she covered her mouth, gazing at Jiang and thinking to herself how handsome he was. She had never collaborated with someone so striking before. The second member introduced was Duan Feng, a level 49 archer also in the second stage. Though not very talkative, he exuded a sense of confidence. He rested a hand on his hip and lifted the other near his forehead, greeting Jiang with a smile and expressing his pleasure at meeting him. The third member introduced was Chu Bulang, a level 49 warrior known for his compact frame, yet formidable strength and eloquence. Stepping forward to Jiang, he stood squarely in front of him, closed his eyes briefly, and grinned as he remarked that having a professional member of divine level was an achievement worth boasting about for a lifetime. The fourth member introduced herself as Tang Jin, a master in the third stage, level 61, specializing in the fire class and holding the rank of sub-commander. Approaching them, she placed her hands on Chu Bulang's and Jiang's heads, gently caressing them, and with a warm smile, requested that they address her as Aunt Tang from now on. She assured them they would have meat every day. Jiang introduced himself with a humble smile as an awakened from the creation class. He wondered aloud how he could warrant such enthusiasm from them. Deep down, he knew that despite its clarity and divine level, the creation class of spiritual mastery was often undervalued by others. Jiang casually slipped one hand into his pocket and gestured with the other, asserting that there was nothing wrong with being a divine-level spiritual master in the creation class. He advised not to heed the words of ignorant critics who spoke nonsense. The team all trusted him. Tang Jin placed her hands on her hips, turned towards him, and smiled warmly, remarking that he was special for choosing to be among them. The Night Watch would be his new home from now on. Jiang walked up to him, placed a hand on his shoulder, and got straight to the point. Gesturing to one side and wearing a serious expression, he explained that to enroll in the Tianjiao training camp, he needed to be at least level 20. He wasn't sure about Jiang's current level. Jiang, with a calm demeanor, revealed that he was now at level 17. This news left him somewhat surprised, considering Jiang had changed jobs just 3 days ago. Grabbing Jiang by the shoulders, he closed his eyes and laughed out loud, thinking he had definitely made the right choice in selecting him. He believed that Jiang possessed true divine talent, making it feasible for him to advance 3 levels in 3 days. Without hesitation, he decided to enroll Jiang in the Tianjiao Genius Camp immediately. Jigang opened his eyes, turned his head, and noticed everyone else watching him with serious expressions. He put his hand in his pocket, turned to Jiang, and with a serious expression, asked if he had encountered any trouble with someone dangerous in the past 3 days. An unknown 3rd grade master was using their divine class to investigate Jiang's whereabouts. Glancing down at the ground, he couldn't help but wonder if a member of the Shiao family might be behind this.